would you be interested in
Sure.
invocation? We'll have an invocation and then the Pledge of Allegiance.
Heavenly Father, please be with us tonight as we help make decisions to aid in the recovery of our community. Please help us to be wise in our decisions and help guide us through these. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have the approval of, roll call, yes, please, roll call, Georgianne, sorry.
Okay, Director Dan Hanson,
Present.
Vice President Shelby Boston,
Present.
President Mark Sullivan,
Here.
Director Greg Bauer,
Present.
and Director Phil Pella is absent.
Thank you, Georgianne.
There he is.
There he is.
Director Phil Pella is absent.
Say present. Say present. Present. There you go.
Okay.
You're the present. Okay. So what we'd like to do is approve the consent calendar if we have any
Yeah, so
discussion
if
on
I
that?
can make a recommendation to pull item C to table that item until next board meeting on the 22nd. We're going to work through legal counsel to get a contract written up with the individual with the low bid to make sure everything is in compliance with our requirements.
Okay, so we're pulling that item. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay.
Until the special board meeting,
22nd. Yep.
the 23rd.
3rd. 23rd. Not 22nd.
Okay. Okay. The minutes, any discussion on the minutes or
Nope. I'll make a motion to approve with the removal of item C to be
Yeah.
tabled for a later date.
Very good. Do we have a second? Second. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, now is the time for public participation. If anybody would like to speak on something that's not on the agenda tonight. Ward?
Okay, I'll go first. Thank you. Good evening, Board. Nice to be back with you again. I was away for 2.5 weeks, and I want to tell you that no matter where you are around this world, I was in Gibraltar, France, Spain, Italy, and England, and everybody has heard of the campfire. We have a name. We are on people's maps. People are watching us. I think we have a long ways to go before the rest of the world finds out we are recovering better than anybody else ever has from any other kind of disaster, because that's what we're going to do. A couple of things I want to mention. First, a thank you to a director who doesn't mind getting his hands dirty and helping in our garden. Mark, thank you. Fixing our irrigation system. Also, I'm wearing one of these, and I had one on today while I was in Costco. And as I'm exiting, the person says, "What's that?" And I said, "I like logo wear." "What does it mean?" I said, "I'm one of the supporters of the Paradise Irrigation District." "Oh, don't they have a lot of problems with their water?" And I said, "Not anymore. This is the great place to get good water." And then I left. But every once in a while, you can have a conversation just with logo wear. And also, I'd like to help us see moving forward with what we used to do in the way of Buy a Bloom. Buy a Bloom was part of how we funded the garden project over here. And I would like to see emphasis from both Water Talk, from directors, from the office, from any way to get publicity, that we'd like to solicit more donations through the Buy a Bloom program. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ward. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
I think we have someone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
First, I apologize for being late to your meeting. But I'm concerned. I'm hearing different things. I'm hearing our water is clean, our water is good. I've gotten 3 different reports on our water at our house. One report right after the water was tested, my neighbor who has a computer, I do not, looked it up for us and said, "Oh, your water's clear." I was really happy, so I called the next day and I asked one of the girls in the office, I hear our water is clear. So she checked it, and she says, oh, no, your water has benzene in it. And so I was pretty disconcerted. So when we came to pay our bill, we always pay it in person because our bill used to get lost in the mail all the time. So I came to pay it in person and asked that girl about our water, and she went and checked on the computer and came back and said, well, your water is not in compliance, but there's no benzene in it. So there's no benzene. Okay. So we've lived in our house. We have a standing home. We've lived in it for 10 months. We had to buy a water tank. My husband has cancer. FEMA quit supporting our motel room because we were staying more in our home than the motel room, which is understandable. Why should they pay for it? However, we had no way to shower when we first went into our home. So we were living, and my husband was just diagnosed and operated on and had a mass removed. So we had to live and go back to our house for back to Chico, to our motel. Thank God we had one in Chico, to our motel for showers, and then to CAT scans, MRIs, PET scans, CT scans, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, to get a shower in Chico. And we were told when we first called, when we moved into our home, we were told by a PID official over the phone, the standing houses are going to be the first homes to get water. Well, it's been 10 months. When March came around, my husband was so very sick, we couldn't keep going back and forth. He was too ill. So we broke down and bought a water heater. By the way, we're living on one Social Security check. We bought a water heater for $4,000, and I hear that's reasonable. I've heard cases of $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, $11,000 for a water tank. So we feel very blessed that we got one for $4,000. To keep water coming into our home, we're paying between $300 and $500 a month for our water. And that is just water that we use for flushing toilets, for showers. We do wash our dishes. We do everything with it except drink it. We've been getting our drinking water. At first, we started getting it at the old Magalia Church. They were giving away the big jugs of water, and we would drive up there and get water and bring it to our home. Then the Hope Center, we've been getting the handheld bottles of water. And the Paradise, what church is it? The Adventist Church has free water there. We heard about it, so then we would go fill up our jugs there. We're still filling up our jugs there. My husband still has cancer. He's still getting treatments. But anyway, we were told that the standing houses were going to get water first. Well, we didn't. They did hook it up in March 5th, I believe it was. I was elated. One of the workers told me, I said, oh, good, we've got water. Is it clear? And one of the workers said, oh, yeah, your water's probably clean because you have this steel pipes, I think they are. Steel, is that the
Steel,
metal?
probably.
Okay. And so I thought, oh, good, we can use that water. That was just before we got the water tank. And the other worker said, well, you can't really count on that because the water is being pulled from everywhere in town, so you can't really count on it being clean. So that's when we broke down and got the water tank, and we've been paying for the water tank to be filled up ever since. The next thing that came along, one of my neighbors who also has a standing home came and told us, you have to buy a backflow device. And I thought, what for? I didn't understand. So I came and asked about it, paid the $546 for the backflow device. It didn't come. That took about 2 months. We finally got the backflow device, and I was told two different things about that as well. I was told, you get the backflow device, they won't put it there unless your water's clear. When you get that, you'll know your water's clean. So after we got that, I called and asked, oh no, your water isn't clean. Yours isn't clear. Now I have neighbors who are rebuilding around our neighborhood, and thank God they are, and they got their building permits and everything. And then the last month when we got our bill, I get a paper from PID that says $3.5 million, I think it was being given to FEMA, or from FEMA and Cal OES. Is that it? Office of Emergency Services? Okay, to help the people that are rebuilding. And I thought, well, okay, that's good. But what about us? We were told the people with the standing homes were going to get water first. and I'm still being told my water isn't clean. I've paid for the backflow device. Oh, and when we first moved into our home, and I called PID, and I was asking about the $21.49 a month, which is now every other month, $40. You may as well say what, $44, whatever it is.
43 something.
I was told, well, you're paying for your meter. I said, okay. What if I have my meter taken out? Well, if you have your meter taken out, you can, but you'll have to pay $500 to have it put back in. So I said, okay, well, we'll just pay for it then. Then, as time went on, I asked again, and they said, well, they took away my meter. When they put in the backflow device, they took the meter away. And I thought, well, wait a minute, I thought that's what I was paying for. So I asked again, and I'm told, no, you're not paying for the meter. You're paying for a relationship with PID. So I've been paying for this happy relationship with PID for 10 months, and I'm still told my water is dirty. My water is not clean. Oh, they were going to have it tested. Then they tested it in June. Now, we had that water tank since March. They tested our water in June, and that's when we had to wait for the results, got the results. Okay, so I said, well, what's the next step? And that's when we were told, I'm sorry I'm jumping all around, but that's when we were told when you get you'll get the backflow device, and then you'll know it's okay. Or you're going to get a letter.
Right.
Haven't gotten any letter.
Okay.
So then, after the backflow device and the checking of the water, I read, and my husband and I would take walks around the circle, and there weren't any homes on them yet, and they were getting their backflow devices before we were. There's nobody living there, and they're getting their backflow devices. I didn't understand that.
Okay.
Not that we don't want our neighbors to have backflow devices. We're happy for them.
What is
We feel
your
like we've been lost.
what is your name, ma'am? Just so
I'm sorry. I should have said that in the first place. I used to take minutes.
That's okay.
I should know. My name is Tanya Jordan.
Okay.
Tanya Jordan.
Okay. And your address, because I'm going to turn this
586.
right over to this gentleman in the red shirt in the back here, and he can actually talk to you on the side if you'd like.
586.
Okay.
Circlewood Drive,
Okay.
and you know the rest.
Yeah,
Paradise, California.
I really appreciate you coming and explaining all this to us. And I can't, speak for, our employees, but they're out there doing the best job they can do.
Oh, I know everybody's busy.
But maybe there was some confusion or something, but if you talk to Jim in the back there in the red shirt, you could even step outside if you want, and I'm sure we'll have a great conversation, and we'll get this straightened out for you. How about that?
I sure hope so,
Yeah.
because it really hurt my feelings.
Yes.
It was, of course, hard enough the way we're having to live.
Right.
But
Right.
it really hurt my feelings to learn that the people that are getting permits and building, and I understand there's revenue in that, and so the town has motivation to give them the clean water and all that, and test their water and everything. But
Right.
wait, they're being tested before us, and we're living there?
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense. Yes,
Your house is standing.
yes, sir.
It's supposed to get number one priority by our engineering staff and
That's what we were
field
told.
staff.
We were told
Don't know
that at
why
the end
they
of December.
delayed.
I'm
Huh?
sorry. We were told at the end of December we were supposed to be the first ones to get water.
Yes, and I've been told that the standing houses get number one priority
Yeah, so
over
that's why,
trailers and anybody else.
my feelings were hurt.
Well,
It's been 10 months.
Well, I'm just going to publicly apologize for how it went with you. But if you don't mind talking to Jim, we'll straighten this out for you as soon as possible.
And your name
I'm Mark.
is Sulik?
Yes.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tanya. I appreciate it. All right.
Go ahead.
Oh, yes. We are at. You're right. We're at PID staff. You can come up, and then we can excuse you, Jim.
Jim. Jim. Oh, yeah, okay. He's got the I have it.
Okay.
And close.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Tanya. Yeah. Okay, we're going to move to number 4. Tammy, recovery status update. Thank you.
At that house, it's not very good. All right.
need to commend her on her demeanor.
Absolutely.
I would have been louder.
Absolutely.
So while he's looking, she was actually in the office when I went in there the other day, and I asked her to come because she had so many different
No
answers.
satisfaction.
So I did ask her to come tonight.
Okay, hello everybody. Nice to meet you. I'm
Nice to
Sam
meet you.
Gator with Waterworks Engineers. And we are the program manager for this recovery project, and I'm going to give an update on how things are going. So the last community meeting was a month ago. The next one is planned for November 18th. We basically are doing a monthly public report on the status of the recovery program, alternating between a board meeting and a public community meeting each month. So here is this month's update. Within the program, we have 4 recovery projects that are being executed. The first one is, yes, sir?
Where and what time is this meeting?
The next community meeting is planned for November 18th.
Not that.
And I think the time would probably be the same as last time, 6 o'clock, and the place would be the same place at the church.
Okay, thank you.
It is on PID's calendar. rather.
Well, I don't, calendars, I screw up.
So we have 4 recovery projects that we're executing on parallel tracks. The first one is the standing structure and main testing and clearing program. The second one is the service lateral replacement program. The third one is the meter replacement project. And the fourth one is reservoir B replacement project. So I'm going to report on all 4 of those parallel paths. And then some of the staff from Waterworks Engineers who are leading those efforts are here to answer any more detailed questions that you might have. So the first project is the standing structure and main testing clearing program update. This is a graphic that we have developed that I'm going to sort of unpack for you, and then we're going to use this in future public communications regarding the progress on this program. What this graphic shows is the number of standing homes that are to be tested, how many we've tested, and how many we've cleared. The first part that I'd like to talk about is the number of standing structures. So I have good news. There are more standing structures in Paradise than were estimated initially by CAL FIRE and subsequently by FEMA. So we've been working with a number of 1,340 from the beginning of the project, and that was based on CAL FIRE estimates and some GIS data that was a lot of times conflicting and problematic. And then there was a survey done by FEMA that was done by a number of different surveyors and amalgamated into one data source that was also somewhat problematic as far as accuracy goes. So we just started testing. We knew there were a lot and we needed to get working, and we didn't go and try to count how many we had to do first. We started testing first, right? So you start, the best way to lift a beam in place is to start lifting. Don't figure how much it weighs first. So we started working, and then, but recently we said, look, we really need to define how many we need to test so we can tell how far along they are and start, being accurate on the predictions on how long this will take. And so we spent some effort to go through and count the number of standing structures and the number of meters that serve those structures, because not every structure is served by a single meter. There are a lot of structures served by multiple meters. For instance, a apartment complex or a commercial building that might have multiple units in the building. There's a number of those around town. So we went through using GIS tools and using aerial imagery and on-the-ground confirmation and try to get a hard count of the number of remaining standing structures and the number of remaining meters that needed to be tested. So that hard count is 1,501 standing structures. So 161 more than what we thought there were, which is great. And those are served by 1,556 meters. So when we look at what our workload is overall, it's to test those 1,556 meters. Because if there's 3 meters serving a building, we need to make sure that all of the system has been tested.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Did you break down commercial versus residential in that 1501?
Not yet, but we can if we.
That would be awesome, just because you've gone to a tremendous amount of work to get that data, and I think it could be really good information for the rest of the county and
We can do that. There's going to be a few we're not going to be certain on. There's certainly some commercial corridors that will
Yeah.
be, I think, easy to identify. There's probably some commercial mixed into residential that's going to be a little trickier.
right.
And we may have, I'm not sure if there is, zoning maps that we can use to make that assessment. So we'll take a look at the data that we have. I don't know if you have other comments on that, but we'll take a look at the data we have to try to make a determination of a decent approximation of what percentage of that is commercial versus residential. So we know.
That'd be great. Thanks.
We do have reasonably accurate data starting in June when that data was starting to be collected by the testers.
And for what we've tested, we can answer that, but for what we have yet to test, I think we'll have to do a little bit of work.
Awesome.
Yes, sir?
Your report says mains and meters. My meter was still working, yet it was taken out when they put in the backflow device and removed. And I'm going, how many, I was told in these meetings that 100% of the meters are dead or you have to replace. And so what are you testing them for if you're taking them all out?
The meter project I'll get to towards the end of the presentation, and be happy to talk about that. I think this says mains and meters. I think maybe it should say mains and laterals is what this is talking about, testing the service lateral.
It's laterals,
Testing the service lateral, right.
yeah, not meters.
Correct.
Okay.
So going across left to right on the chart, there are 1,556 locations that need to be tested. We've tested 626 of those, so that's 44%. We've cleared 453 of those, so 29% of the system has been of the locations of the system have been cleared. On the right-hand side of the chart is looking at the mains, because clearing of mains is obviously a key step in clearing a structure, and 81% of the mains have been cleared today, which is a really good thing, because now as we're testing houses, the likelihood that the main has been tested and cleared is quite high. We still are targeting completion by spring of 2020, even with that additional 160 locations or 200 locations, looking at the 1556. We think we can still make that happen. So that's the update on the testing. I did want to touch really quickly on the process for lifting the water quality advisory at an address. And I'm not going to go through every bullet, but it's a fairly long process. When you walk up to a house and say, okay, I want to see if I can test and clear this house, there's all of those steps to go through of preparation, hosing over from the neighbor to provide continuous service, stagnation, sampling, processing the sample, quality control, data management, and then reviews by staff to make sure that what we're clearing should be cleared, and another quality control step, and then a letter being sent out once that information is available. So there are a lot of steps that it takes between the time that the staff walks up to a house to decide that we're going to test it and the day that that person might get a letter. And I think there has been some questions about that time frame. We've been working to compress that, but it still takes, probably about a month for that to happen between the day we walk up and the day that we have an answer. So currently the main clearing map looks like this. We're still seeing those really high rates of clearances on especially large diameter mains. Again, 81% of the mains have been cleared. You can see very few of those main samples have come back non-compliant. And then this is what the current water quality advisory lifted map looks like as far as the places that have received a letter and that their water quality advisory has been lifted for their location. So that keeps growing. It also keeps growing in a fairly random pattern throughout the system, so people are getting equal attention as much as we can.
Each dot represents what?
Each dot represents one service.
One service. Okay, thanks.
So can I ask you a real quick question?
Yeah.
This is a personal question. Can you go back to the previous?
Yeah.
That's not right there. Personal interest of mine. Actually, there's 3 standing homes there. And that's all that's served off of that little lateral there. What would slow down you guys checking that particular area, when what it appears on the map that you actually have hit both sides of it.
So,
And
yeah,
if you look at the next one where the advisories are listed on both sides of those 3 properties.
right. So there's 800 and some odd locations right now that haven't been tested,
Right.
right? And there are some that are in clumps, and we're trying to do those groupings, as soon as possible. A lot of them are branches off of cleared mains. So as we go through and continue to test, we are testing, that same condition happens all over town. So there's nothing stopping us other than.
No, I understand. I understand that. I'm just trying to educate myself when somebody does ask me, hey, look,
Yeah.
my next door neighbor, his house is done and they didn't do mine for some reason. Just trying to.
Yeah, the first group of houses that we did were people that could stagnate their service laterals
Right.
without us having to do a hose over from a neighbor. And there was a volunteer thing that happened in July, so that cleared a fair number of people. And then we've gone through and done a number of, we did another opportunity for people to volunteer for that. And then right now what we're doing is to provide continuous water service while still stagnating the service lateral, hosing over from a neighbor's house to serve that house, or hosing over from a neighboring service to serve that
Right.
house. And now we're just working our way through the system. The way that the prioritization is happening now is as random as we can to be as fair as we can. So we try to bounce all over town. We do groups so that we're as efficient as we can be in our testing. But the selection of the next group is done by somebody that knows nobody here and just looks at, okay, where's the next group that I can catch that's going to be efficient? Because we understand that I think there's probably people frustrated throughout town that their house hasn't been tested yet, and we're just working our way through. We can do something like 40 a week with the equipment and manpower or the personnel that we have. And so we continue to go at that pace, and at that pace we expect that we can get through the work by next spring.
It's a great explanation. Thank you.
It's not enough. It's too slow. It really isn't enough.
So
They only have so much manpower.
I think considering what the early estimates were, it's pretty astounding and positive, the work that has happened to this point. So I appreciate it.
if the limit on pace is personnel and equipment. And so if the board would like us to go and look at what it would cost and take to hire and bring in the personnel equipment to go faster, we could do that and come back to the board with a project to do that.
I think the customers we have would like that.
The one thing we looked at was we had to be able to flow, right? And if we got into a contract that had bringing in 600 individuals to do this in this time, we weren't able to flow with what we've learned in the field. This is a learning process, right? A month ago, we finally feel like we got this kind of down. Even a month ago, we were changing our processes to speed things up, to try to make things more efficient so that people didn't have to turn their services off. We did a big push, and that big push, we had some quality issues. Those quality issues actually set us back instead of sprung us forward. So there's certain paces that we're trying to accomplish, but also keep the quality level at the highest level. Because at the end of the day, the biggest goal that we have, it's almost like your investments, right? You want liquidity over security, over rate of return, right? Those are your three. We want to make sure health and safety is our number one, so that when we send that letter to that individual, we know for a fact that that water is good and clean. So 20 years down the line, they're not coming back and going, I have some weird cancer or some weird health issue. So the issue is definitely pace. But that's not the highest priority. The highest priority is quality and health and safety for that customer. So that's what we really focused on. We have a discussion almost weekly Is there something more that we can do? Can we speed this up? What are the processes going forward? Where are we focusing our attention? And that has always been our number one focus, is the health and safety and quality of that result coming back to that customer, that their house is clear. Because I can tell you right now, if it took me another 3 months, and I'm not in their position, so I'm just saying it for myself, if it took me another 3 months to give me the assurance that in 20 years my water is still as clean as possible, then if I get that assurance 2 months earlier and I figure out that there was a mistake made, I would take the 2 months.
Is part of the problem training of personnel? You've said you have to have personnel trained and it takes time. You've changed your process. That means you had to retrain people at the same time on how to take samples.
It's not, at this point, the personnel that are working on this project from PID are doing an outstanding job.
Okay.
I think we have a crew and a system that is working as efficiently as it can.
But did you go through a lot of personnel to get there?
We have gone, we've used a lot of mutual aid people over time. And so that was a lot of personnel changes with mutual aid assistance. We've been able to settle on a PID crew that has been focused on this, and I think that's, now the crew is doing it.
They're all PID employees?
No, it's augmented with AFWD staff and PID employees. So the PID employees, that Michael is in charge from the Waterworks Engineering to set the policy procedures and the quality. We then have a supervisor from PID that supervises the overall crew. And then we have 2 PID employees that work in team with the AFWD workers to go through and set up the sites and to work through the system as going forward.
What's an AF?
AFWD, it's Alliance for Workforce Development. It's the individuals that are procured through a grant that are that the grant pays for all of their labor and benefits to help support the recovery process from the campfire.
And on those group of people, we don't have a high turnover. They're doing excellent work.
They're doing excellent work, and the only turnover that we have on that is if their contract runs out, that they're only through the grant, they're only allowed to pay them a certain amount through the grant process. So when that process runs out, then we do have turnover. But what we've decided, that we've seen such great work with those individuals, that we feel it's a benefit to the district to hire them as temporary employees to keep them on so that we don't lose that momentum. And so we are actually interviewing for 5 temporary employees tomorrow to bring them on, to pay them, to move this project forward without any hiccups.
They're already trained.
They're already trained, yeah.
Thank you.
There is something to be said for having stable production on this. The more stable we are in our production rate, the better our accuracy has been and the better our quality has been.
I imagine so.
Sammy, is it possible? Of course, you're not taking the calls. Our customer reps, service reps are. But if a customer calls and says, "I've got a critical need at my house, that I need water, now."
Yes,
we can prioritize that. Okay.
And that's we actually have, what is the word for that? We have a word for that. It's called the special project.
We have specials.
Yes.
Special.
There's a peculiar set of circumstances.
Okay.
And that we're able to work them in. And if it's not sometimes that same day, it's the next week. And we combine it with other work we're doing to make it efficient.
Okay.
And it's usually a certain set of special circumstances.
Okay, that's fair.
Even some days, it's that special circumstance is handled that day. So they come at noon. We have people out there at 3:00.
Okay.
So if we would have, honestly, if I would have heard this, that was a special circumstance.
Yes, that's what I was.
And so I think there was a communication disconnect. Absolutely, that would have been a special circumstance that would have been pushed to the priority list.
Yeah. So Bill, we do have that. So need it immediately. Yeah.
Okay, I haven't had anybody complain about that.
Okay. Just thank you.
Good. Project 2 is the Service Lateral Replacement Program update. So this is the program to bring in, for service lateral replacement. So far to date, there have been 61 service laterals replaced by PID staff, both on standing structures have been 11, and then in supportive rebuilds there have been 50. And that's been by PID staff mostly over the last 6 to 8 weeks. We have a project out to bid for 650 service lateral replacements on burned lots to be performed by an outside contractor. So that project went out to bid. We open bids for that project tomorrow. We've had good interest from the contracting community. We probably have 6 to 10 potential bidders, which is great. From judging from the pre-bid conference and the questions we've been getting during bid time, Colleen will be here tomorrow to open bids, and we will have a special board meeting on the 23rd, a week from today, at 10 o'clock in the morning, to review and consider accepting the responsive low. So, with that, we've also been working with the town of Paradise on a priority list for replacements to support rebuilds in a timely fashion. The priority list is based on the successful completion of one of two things, depending on the type of new home it is. If it is a stick-built home, whether they have a slab inspection completed is the determination of whether they are on the where they stand on the priority list. The current backlog of those is approximately 94. If it's a manufactured home, it's approved permit is what gets them on the priority list, and the current backlog of those is 46. So we have a current backlog of 140 what we call priority locations, meaning they are well along in the building process based on what we work with the town of Paradise to come up with for criteria, and we want to make sure they get their service lateral replaced in an effort to not hold up their certificate of occupancy. So again, for a stick-built home, it would be at the slab inspection stage, knowing that they are well on their way to framing and so forth. With a manufactured home, it would be an approved permit, meaning they're probably on their way to getting that thing brought out and set. Yes, sir?
How many have you already done? It doesn't have that there.
So far, this contractor hasn't been hired yet to do these. The PID...
It says you have a current backlog. You must have done something on one of them.
PID staff have done 61.
I've done 61?
Yep. 50 in support of rebuild and 11 for standing structures like that.
Okay, thank you.
So those 140 are obviously the focus of the initial work by the contractor, which we would like to hopefully hire next week. At 6 per day, which is what we're asking them for a minimum production rate, we would hope to have that backlog completed by January. That would be, assuming that we have reasonable weather, which we just were looking at the NOAA forecast for November and December. I think, hopefully it was relatively dry, just wet enough to make sure there's no fires, dry enough to work as much as we can. So that'll be the primary focus of the initial phase of this contract, is to get through that backlog. Again, there's a little discussion about specials on the front for testing standing structures. In this case of installing service lateral replacements, there are also specials. As we know about projects that are nearing completion, if we haven't done them yet as a part of this contract, PID staff are able to go in and prioritize those, with the goal being to not hold anybody up from moving into their home when it's been rebuilt or brought back or brought onto the site from manufactured home. Yes.
On the backflow devices, I was told you had last month, I think it was, 400, and you did 400, but now you have, I don't remember the number, we'll cover it later. But can that happen with this? In other words, you've got a backlog that you figure if you do 6 a day, you'll have them caught up, but you'll have more people apply, I would think.
So this is, the contract that's going out is for 650. We just know the first 140 are the first critical ones. But that still leaves us with 510 additional locations that this contractor will be able to install the service lateral replacement. So as soon as we're done with the priority backlog, then we're going to mix rebuild sites with temporary housing sites. So we're going to still keep up with the rebuild list. So as somebody gets their slab inspection, we'll go out there and replace their service lateral. As somebody gets their permit approved for their manufactured home, will go out there and replace their service lateral. But once we get out of that backlog, what it'll allow us to do is also at that time, mix in nearby locations to be efficient. So in this first 140, we may go to a block, a cul-de-sac, and replace one service lateral to a rebuild, even though there might be 4 rebuilds on that cul-de-sac, because that's the only one that's passed their slab inspection, and the other ones are further behind. And we want to make sure we get everyone taken care of that's nearing completion. Then when we come back, once we've kind of got through that first hump, when we come back to that same cul-de-sac, we would do all of them on that cul-de-sac to be efficient, time efficient and cost efficient. And maybe there's somebody in a trailer on that same cul-de-sac, we catch them too. So there's going to be sort of an initial surge of making sure we get out in front of people's building permits. And then once we feel comfortable that we're ahead of the game, then we'll go in and take care of everybody in a more efficient manner, if that makes sense. Any other questions on the service lateral replacement? Okay, the next project is the meter replacement project. So the plan right now is for the meter and service assembly replacement to be performed by PID staff after the new lateral has been installed. More than 750 meters have been removed and tested in support of the insurance claim for the meters. So they're out here in the yard, and each one has been tested and cataloged. The damage rate is more than 25% for those 750 meters. And some of the damage is apparent, and some of the damage is internal. So the meters are being visually tested and then tested on the bench to see if they meet all the original parameters for those meters. Zenner is scheduled to be here to test the AMR system the week of 10/28. Yes, sir?
How many meters have we bought?
New meters?
New meters.
I don't believe we bought any new meters at this point.
Speaks for itself.
Okay. At this point, what we're doing is testing the meters that are out there in support of the insurance claim. The insurance claim would pay for the replacement of all of the meters. Once that's been established and we have the approval and the settlement with the insurance for replacing all of the meters, we'll go through the process of doing so. Zenner is scheduled to come out and test the AMR system, the automatic meter read system, the week of 10/28 to get an idea of how much damage was done to that AMR system and what it will take to reestablish the AMR system at the same time we're reintroducing meters. We obviously will have more discussion on this topic in upcoming meetings as we move the system back towards metered service. And next Wednesday, we'll be talking about a service assembly standard, which for you guys to review and consider going forward to use as the PID staff replace the meters and install backflow preventers at these new service locations or restored service locations.
So, real quick on the testing of the meters, do we have a standard number that we have to meet for the insurance to cover them, or is there a point where we can just say, okay, fine, we're not testing any more meters, we're just pulling them?
The number that they were looking for is to test 3% of the total, and then within that 3%. We were going to give them the damage number.
Right.
The big thing with the meters is that the meters are as a unit they're not real pricey. So the cost benefit analysis of going out testing and then putting back into if they're still good, putting them back into service versus actually just replacing the whole set.
That's my question. Is if the intent is to replace them all? If we need to test a certain number, then just stop testing and wasting the time.
That's exactly what
And that's what we're
Okay.
doing.
Okay.
That's exactly it.
And we're about there with the number that we tested as far as
Okay. Perfect.
having enough to make the case to the insurance company that this is the damage rate that we've seen in this sample set. Based on that damage rate, it's cheaper to just replace all the meters than it is to go out there and test every one to see if it's working right or not. And then they, we make that settlement with the insurance company and then move forward with the purchase and installation of new meters.
So the hold up on meters is the insurance company has not come through with money to support it, or what?
It's a twofold argument. So the insurance has come out and said that they are going to cover the meter as a unscheduled asset. So we are going through the process of proving out that damage. We also have to prove out the damage to FEMA, because just because it's a insurance claim doesn't mean that the insurance is going to cover 100% of the meter. And we're looking to do an upgrade to that meter for a mitigation standpoint. So instead of putting plastic meters and plastic boxes back into the ground, we want to put a brass meter with a concrete box in the ground. That increases the cost of it. That is what they call 406 hazard mitigation cost. And so that needs to be proven out to FEMA. So just because insurance only wants 3%, we have to really run this by FEMA. FEMA takes time and takes effort, and it takes a lot of proving out to them also. So we don't want to get out in front of ourselves to cut our nose off to spite our face that we are going to lose that mitigation money on the other side. So we're going through it in a two-step process to make sure that we have the hazard mitigation monies along with the insurance monies. So Sammy's actually helping us with the standard, which you'll see on next Wednesday. The meter standard and the meter box standard will have those standards will be put in place for mitigating this problem into the future.
The next project is Project 4, Reservoir B Replacement Project. So we are continuing to work on several potential sources of grant funding to augment the insurance proceeds to replace Reservoir B. We were working with USDA Rural Utility Services. We started a grant application with them, and one of your agenda items tonight is a board resolution to make that grant application, essentially. We started also a hazard mitigation grant application with FEMA, and we are in the process of applying for 406 funding through the FEMA PA process. We are doing all of these different approaches to try to fund that project, to try to figure out which one can get us the money quickest. At this point, the USDA grant funding looks like it would probably be into the middle of next year before that might be available. The hazard mitigation grant program, we don't know the time frames, and the 406 funding through the FEMA PA process seems like it might be the fastest in terms of getting the grant funding for replacing that reservoir. But we're continuing with all of the approaches until one of them results in a check. That's basically the plan.
And just remember, we don't want to put Reservoir B back the way it was, right? So that's the reason why there's so many different funding opportunities here, because it is an insured asset. The insurance will pay for replacement cost of that asset, which is the Hyperline tank. We have the option that Sammy had developed before the fire was the 2-tank option, which we still really want to do. So the 2-tank option has quite a bit of an increase in price. So again, the 406 mitigation requires a BCA calculation, a cost-benefit analysis, to try to justify that additional cost. And we are expanding the amount of water that we're storing in there too. So it's an increase in storage too. So it's not being put back to pre-fire condition. It's actually an expansion. So the 1-tank option does seem like it's FEMA fundable. The 406 or the 404 mitigation, which is the hazard mitigation grant program, is for that 2nd tank option, so that we could take advantage of the grant funding on that. And then the USDA, we were kind of told at the very beginning that they were going to get an influx of disaster recovery funds that kind of seemed like they went bye-bye. And we felt like this actually was a really good project for that, because it really fit into a lot of their programs. And so we still are kind of running down both parallel paths, but both paths kind of lead us to the same results. So we're using the same data to fill out all of the grant applications. Aptum and Waterworks has helped quite a bit to develop the argument that the BCA calculation is very positive for putting those 2 tanks in. in that site. And so that's our number one priority going down, is to go through the 406 funding for the PA process for the 2-tank project going forward. So that's where we're at.
Kevin, is there a match on that USDA? Like
There
we
was a match, and it was a 60-40, but we were hoping to take the insurance proceeds and then match the insurance proceeds and then take the additional portion and then build it off of that. But those seem to have dried up tremendously too. So the hazard mitigation has a match portion of that also, which is a 75-25. The 406 PA is the 6 1/4, which is the best by all stretches. But you do take the full project and deduct your insurance proceeds off of that, so those insurance proceeds wouldn't be your match proceeds.
Is there anything we can do quicker than, 8 months from now?
So the timelines on those grant applications might not support having something ready for next summer, right? So that's obviously concerning that. When we go into next summer, we'd like to have something at Reservoir B, a balancing reservoir there, because this last summer and up until now, operating the treatment plant without Reservoir B is difficult. They're having to use the treated water storage tank as a reservoir, which means you're varying the level of that tank, which is normally used for chlorine disinfection only. So it makes the disinfection process challenging and meeting water quality requirements challenging. As demand picks up, which we would expect next summer for demand to pick up considerably, that's going to become more and more challenging. And so we'd like to have a solution in place by next summer, regardless of whether any of these grant applications come to fruition in time to build the big project before next summer. So to be able to address that, we're currently working on the preliminary design of a temporary Reservoir B for use if the grant funding timelines don't support replacement of Res B with the permanent project before next summer. We're looking at possible sites for that temporary reservoir. They include the Reservoir B site, of course. They also include the water treatment plant, and we're looking at some vacant lots along the transmission main that are at the right elevation that might support a temporary tank for us to use while we're pursuing the grant funding and getting the project constructed to have the permanent reservoirs at Reservoir B.
So could you get that tank ready by May? Or?
Yes. That's the goal of having the plan in place for the temporary tank, or temporary tanks, depending on how we do it, is to have it in place before May, so that then next summer we're able to meet that higher demand.
Any idea on cost?
We haven't even figured out what it looks like yet, but I think that cost, there's two parts of the cost. It's certainly FEMA fundable under Category B for emergency condition. That cost also would be one of the arguments for them funding the big project. And so as we put that cost together, that'll go into our argument to say, hey, give us the money to build the permanent project now so we can avoid having to do this temporary project for next summer. That's all happening this month and next month. If we could get funding in place, by November and get a project out to bid over December, January, that could potentially get constructed before next summer. The times are crunching in right now, and that's why we're looking at this temporary reservoir as part of the project potentially.
Can we get by with one tank with what we're having to service now, the amount of water and everything? Can one tank do it?
Yeah, for just serving drinking water to the public, a small tank will do it, which is why the temporary tank will probably be a small or a series of small tanks. The purpose of the two reservoirs at Reservoir B, the two steel tanks at Reservoir B, is twofold. One is to better support firefighting. And when we roll back to before the fire, when I was in front of the board talking about the project, and this was just a hazard mitigation project, the whole point of that Reservoir B project was to put more water storage in the system so that there was more water available for firefighting. And we looked at the 2008 Camp Fire as our sort of model of what we needed in terms of fire flows. The other idea behind having two steel tanks at Reservoir B is to allow taking one of them out of service for maintenance while still leaving the other one in place. Reservoir B, because it's so central to the whole distribution system, is certainly a good candidate for having two tanks so that you can take one out of service for maintenance and still operate the system using the second tank.
But a basic one tank, if we could find the money for it, would at least have the system running, right?
Yes.
But the reason why we're going after the 2 under the PA is because those funds are available now. It's time to build the project the way you would
What's
want to
the
build the project.
PA get?
Public assistance. It's FEMA, through FEMA. So FEMA would be paying almost the whole share of that project. And if we delay it, then now we're going out and looking for other funds.
It's a loan, isn't it? It's not a
Nope.
grant?
It's a grant.
It's
Loan?
Grant.
Oh, it's a grant. Well, that'd be
It's a
great if we could get it.
92.5% grant, or 93.5% grant.
93 and 7
Change. Okay.
It's a 93.75% grant.
Oh, yeah. We could probably afford that.
So that is the update on the 4th project, the Reservoir B project, and I'm happy to discuss any of those in more detail or any questions.
How big do the temporary tanks have to be to satisfy that need?
Give me 2 weeks. 3 weeks. We're looking at that. I don't know the answer to that. And, you know, of course, one of the things we're looking at is portable tanks like Dembesti or Rain for Rent, you know, and multiples of those, and maybe in multiple locations. But we're looking at what kind of volume variation has been seen this last summer at the treatment plant in the treated water storage tank, and then start projecting that into what we would anticipate for next summer's flows, which is a little bit of a crystal ball kind of thing, and then trying to use that to determine what we would like to see for temporary reservoir volumes, and then looking at the most cost-effective way to provide that.
But doesn't it get complicated because you have to calculate out all the water that's been drawn off the system for debris removal?
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
Very good.
So,
Predicting next summer's demand is like I said, it's a crystal ball.
see, so now he wants 4
Because-
weeks.
The other
because
thing,
it's I mean, it's totally
the other
different.
thing you're looking
It's
at
gonna
is how
be-
many people are going to up their irrigation next summer. That's what's really going to drive the demand, right, is how much irrigation is going on in the system. And
Right.
so people with burned lots who now think, well, maybe I'm going to rebuild, might be in there doing some landscaping first and irrigating landscaping. So I think the predictions for next summer are going to be difficult to do, but we'll have a range, and we'll look at different size tanks and make recommendations.
I have a comment. The 2140, I think that's what it is. At any rate, I run 3-4 sprinklers now and water everywhere. I don't have a meter, and I've never used such a volume of water, and everything's being watered that I'd ever want to, and no meter. So the district gets 2140. We put pressure on the B reservoir or its replacement or temporary reservoir, which you say is a guesswork. And as the word gets more and more people out there that are going to put water through, because I've been told in these meetings that that's just great, you're flushing the pipes out. So it's a two-edged sword, and that's one of the reasons I think we need the meters, and we need the cash flow, and we need to have our customers pay a fair price for it. And
Yeah, the restoration of the meter system is definitely a priority project. It's our Project 3, right? I mean, we're working on all of them at the same time, and that will continue to develop and work towards getting meters in place and getting the system back to metered service as soon as we can.
okay, but I don't see any money in the budget or any place else for meters. Even in this report, I like your report. You're doing a great job, Sam. But I don't see money being set aside I'm hoping this $7 million, if it ever does show up, will have money for meters in it.
The expectation is that the insurance company will fund a large portion of that based on the damage that we're seeing in the meters that we've sampled.
When will the money come from the insurance company?
I don't know the time.
We have to make a claim. So we're working on putting the claim together, and then once the claim is put in, then they will pay. But we don't want to be out in front of ourselves so that we're not, and then we have to make the claim to FEMA for the upgrade to the meter, brass meter, with the concrete box, with the backflow assembly, for the mitigation against the disaster that just occurred. So it's a multi-step process that we can't just take quick steps to get solved if we want to make sure that we're getting the most money from the federal government and from the insurance proceeds.
Are you positive if we put new meters in that they're actually going to turn us down on money later?
That is a large possibility.
If
that
it's not done in the proper sequence,
Right.
absolutely.
FEMA will deny it. And everything gets audited. After FEMA gives us money, then the OIG comes in and then they audit everything and look for things that are not allowable,
No,
and
I
then
know.
we're
I
on the
worked for
hook.
Government out of college and left rather quickly, but I'm very much familiar with government agencies. If they give you money, the strings are really there. It's like
Absolutely.
$7 million, and we're supposed to have a plan to merger with some district to be able to get that money. I never heard anything about a plan yet where we're going to merge to whoever.
I think that's a different agenda item
Yeah,
all in
I'm
itself.
always getting ahead of myself.
But I do think, I want you to know, we understand and share your sense of urgency behind all four of these fronts. The testing, the service lateral replacement, the meter replacement, and the reservoir B. We understand they're all very important, and, we're working, on all four fronts to
Well,
advance
my
them as quickly
job
as
is
we can.
to represent people in the district who have questions about why things aren't happening and so forth,
Sure.
like the lady that came here tonight. And so that's where I'm from.
Yep.
And you must understand that's where my questions are coming
course.
from. I'm not trying to make it difficult for you. I'm trying to get as much information out as I can, and you keep adding to it, which makes it even better. And the other directors ask questions and helps. So that's our job. Represent the people of the district. They own the place.
Absolutely.
And I got to add, I do think having unmetered service right now is an incentive. There has been an incentive for people to stay on the system. In other words, not to disconnect. To me, there's an incentive there to continue to have water service. Okay, right now.
Yep.
So anyway, my 2 cents.
Anything else?
Thank you, Sammy.
Thank you, Sammy.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
See you guys next week.
Yeah. Public comment, please, Ward.
Yes, thank you. I'm at all the meetings, you know that. I have never heard anybody here say that one of your customers has sued you for poor quality water. Am I correct? You're not being sued for poor quality water. You haven't created cancer in anybody's body. Let's compare that to Flint, Michigan. Just go back that many months and consider Flint, Michigan. A lawyer's dream. So citing on a little bit of caution here has made a big difference to me. I'm the guy in the top box on your organizational chart. I'm the public, remember? This is my company, remember? I don't mind at all that you take an extra precaution. And I'm drinking my water just fine. There's nothing wrong with it, and I'm glad the temperature's dropping a little. And my meter still works. It's an old one from 1975 in a concrete box, and I know it works just fine. And I'd be happy to pay you for it. I even take readings once in a while because I have a neighbor that steals water. Thank you.
You should have the hazard mitigation meter. We should go take a picture of it.
Yes.
Thank you, Ward. Appreciate it. Okay, well, let's move on to number 5. PID staff and facility report updates. Kevin?
That'd be me. One sec. So from the recovery operation, Jim and Michael both are here, and Robert. He's part of that big team. For questions about any of the operation, the recovery, they've been working tirelessly. If Jim wants to give an update on other organizations out there creating more work for us, he can give that one. The staff has kind of gotten into a good groove for this last month of real good production on the backflow devices, the interim water. We have a real good, solid group of individuals up there that are motivated and determined. We've put a individual from the office up in the courtyard to help schedule and to follow through on some of the customer outreach to help with that status of things. So we're getting into a real nice groove. The one thing is the customers are still out. They're not outpacing us, but they're still coming in, and a lot of them are still ordering backflow devices, which creates more work for us, but it's a great sign for recovery. It means that people are interested in their lot. They want water on it, and they're looking to do something with it. We don't know what it is, but they're looking to do something. So we have over 1,200 backflow devices that have been ordered. I believe we're up to 700, over 700.
We're near 8.
We're nearing 8.
With what we just put today, we may exceed 8 tomorrow.
So that I believe a month ago we were at 400 maybe. So we've put a lot of work and effort in. We're 2 weeks ahead of schedule of what the schedule looked like that we were telling the customers. So we're trying to beat their expectations out there. There's going to be some problems, and we found them. There's going to be areas that don't have water because main lines are tore up. Rocky Lane, I believe, is the one that has the main line on the top of the surface, is right?
Right.
Yeah, so that one's going to be a little more difficult to get interim water there right now, but it's on our priority list too. So we're having to prioritize these multiple facets of recovery. And then a contractor will be out there and hit one of our main lines, and that takes us away from that. So we have to then respond to that to go out and fix that main line, and that seems to be happening once a day, it seems like, right?
Kevin, when somebody does that, okay, and we know who did it, how are we handling that?
Well, if it's marked, which I think happened today, right?
Today we were addressing it.
Yeah. So if it's
Okay.
marked through a USA mark, then
Right.
we are then going to go after them for the payment.
Right.
If it's unmarked, then we're having to go out and do it ourselves to
I see.
repair it. We're the USA issue is, but Dustin maybe can talk about it a little bit, but it's become more complicated to get somebody on board than we originally thought. So we're still working through those processes of getting the contract up to speed. So we're still using our own forces to do those USAs. PG&E is just gangbusters coming through. And I don't know if PG&E is PG&E the main culprit?
Or their subs.
Yeah. So they're coming in. When they come in, it seems like they think they own the town. They shut streets down and they just start ripping through things. So then we are having to kind of fix things here and there.
You just answered my question on PG&E.
Okay.
Kevin, I just have a question with the tree removal process getting ready to launch. That's just going to mean more subcontractors of Cal Recycle,
Yes.
potentially damaging.
So we have asked to be part of the planning portion of that so that we know where they're going to be. The one thing that we have decided is you probably see a lot of barricades out there. Mm-hmm. They're PID barricades, and they're there for a purpose to mark our services, knowing that the tree companies were going to come in and they like to drop things everywhere, stack things everywhere, and then pull things out when they come and pull them out of things. So we have those stanchions there for a purpose to mark them so that when a tree company does come in, we can say, hey, these are our facilities, watch for them, and make sure you're not falling the trees anywhere close to these facilities. Because the facility itself, it's marked, it's great for the barricade for the backflow, but it's also where the meter is too. So we're marking two different locations there. Right. The one thing that we'll be looking at trying to mark or at least give a heads up is we have air release vacs out there that we have purposely hidden, before the fire because we didn't want people to. So it wasn't an eyesore. So they are a little bit hard to see every once in a while, especially with some of the vegetation growth. So we're going to have to be really leery of that to make sure that either we know where they are and we're out there marking the facilities, or we let them know where our facilities are. That pretty much answered it.
All these new backflow assemblies are going to be vulnerable.
Yep, and that's so every.
Yeah.
So we
Or one of the reasons.
Right. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The mutual aid staff has kind of slowed down a little bit just from the timing and the length. We do have a group coming in next week from City of Napa that's going to be assisting for a week. But the AFWD workers have really done a spectacular job. A lot of them are jump right in. They become part of the team. And Jim and Michael and Robert have been great of teaming them up with individuals and finding their strengths and using their strengths. There's one individual up there that is the master backflow builder, and that's what he does. He goes out and builds backflows every day, and he is happy as a clam, and he has great production rate. And there's another one that Michael uses for specialty projects of bigger meters. He just is great with that type of device, and he goes out there and he handles the bigger meter sampling and setting up for sampling and hosing over. So the workforce has been really positive, great hard work, and I can't say enough about them, and they continue to come in. We continue to have a steady flow of individuals. And like I said, there's at least 5 that we're going to bring on as a temporary position to get us through this recovery process going forward. So I don't know. Does that sound about right?
It sounds about right. We made some staffing changes last week, started to transition a bit with staffing. Michael needed some real consistency, and so we were able to work it out to where we could put some permanent PID utility workers in to work with Michael, so we have that consistency there with some knowledge of the PID system. And so I think with those changes, and again, AFWD workers, we have 3 came in last week. We have 2 more coming Monday, which will add to Michael's workforce. And we are approached the way that we're allocating our resources for interim water supply. We'll be able to execute that in a much quicker manner now, and attacking service line replacements to provide potable water to those on mains that have been declared potable. So our staffing is looking really good, and I think within the next couple of weeks it's going to look even better. So when March rolls around, we're aces.
Yes.
So if I could report real quick.
Absolutely.
On our customer that was here earlier, I want to thank Sandy and Michael. They were quickly able to pull up some information that helped me to recall what had occurred there. The biggest part of that was communication breakdown, and I will own that. It's difficult in the early days to know exactly what we're doing and how we were keeping information. When Waterworks came aboard, we started being able to track information better. So there was a transition period of time there that those 2 things overlapped. Once I learned what was going on and speaking with her, there was a quick and easy resolution to that. She seemed to fully understand what was going on. I recall speaking with her several times early on, February, March, and she knew that too. We have a plan already in place to replace the service line at her standing structure. We found that it was contaminated by benzene, and so they haven't been using it any other than for irrigating periodically. It's been on the tank. She's grateful that they will be able to get off the tank. We will hand deliver a letter of potability once Colleen runs it through the system after we replace the service line, which we will schedule for next week. And so we will make mistakes, and we will own them, and we will fix them, and that's exactly what we're doing with Mr. and Mrs. Jordan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I really appreciate you taking care of that.
Absolutely. My privilege.
From a customer service standpoint, we have actually got a new individual at the desk. I think Mark talked to her today. And she's had experience with other campfire survivors and helping them get through. I forget exactly what she was doing in the past, but so she has kind of really transitioned in really well. She talks to them and she understands what they're going through, and she's a good calming force in the office. So we were able to fill the person that we sent up to help with Jim with a backfill with this individual. And so we're now starting to get in a real good groove in the office too. Starting Monday, our office hours will go back to 9 to 4, so the phone will be open the whole time. And we're starting to see a slowdown on the phone, which is really nice, which I got to thank Jim and his staff for getting out there and getting these interim water services in, because that was a lot of the calls were these interim water service. Where's it at? Where's it at? Where's it at? Then now they're getting installed. The phones are slowing down, and we're actually able to kind of open up the phones to give people a little bit of. We had them at 2 to give people a break to get work done from 2 to 4 because there was just no opportunity to get off the phone. So now there's that little lag, so they're able to get the work done. And with the augmented staff, it's helped quite a bit. So on operations side, I'll answer any questions at this point, and I'm going to get into the FEMA list because I think it's important for the district to know what we're claiming is damage to FEMA. And the project list is pretty extensive, and it's some things you probably don't even realize we own. So, emergency protective measures are what everybody is calling Cat B. So Cat B FEMA claims are emergency protective measures or temporary services. Those are paid at a different percentage than what a permanent repair is. So a Cat B gets paid at a 90% FEMA and 7.5% state. So our local share is only 2.5% on Cat B stuff. But there's limitations on it. It has to be emergency protective measures, and it has to be temporary. It cannot be a permanent fix. So like the tank up at Res B for the temporary tank, that's category B. If it's a tank that we're putting in and replacing, it's category F. So there's the difference. There's categories A through F, just to let you know. A and B are emergencies, and C through F are permanent repairs. Ross has been working tirelessly on getting these claims into FEMA. So this is a lot of our overtime, the mutual aid, and the testing. So the testing that we're doing out there is considered emergency repair or emergency protective measures for health and safety. So all of this testing is being paid under this category B. So we are the repressurization of the system, the shutting down of the system, all of those actions are category B actions that we're compiling, and we're trying to get those what they call obligated. So you can have a project with FEMA, but until FEMA buys off on it, quote unquote, it's not obligated. So there's no funds brought down to the state for you to draw off those. So you kind of have to prove out your claims first, and then they're obligated, which goes through like a 9-step process all the way to the congressional process. And then those funds are obligated, and those funds then go into the state, and then we just make requests from the state to draw down those funds. So that's emergency protective measures. Anything else to say on that? Yeah. Hazardous tree removal, that's actually category A. It's debris removal is category A. So hazardous tree removal is category A. We have quite a few hazardous trees, not only in our properties, but within our right-of-ways, which goes to, we own roads. So within the road right-of-ways, we have trees that are our responsibility to take out. So we've hired a arborist. The arborist went out and did his inspection on the trees and at our facilities. So our tank sites, treatment plant, and at the corp yard and any other little lands we might own have gone through and have marked those. And right now what we're doing is we're going to make a request to the state to have those trees included in the state's program as they come through and take down their trees through the FEMA process that they're looking at trying to implement. If they deny our request, then we will then go out and hire our own tree forester to come and take out those trees that are marked.
Are we trying to cooperate with Fire Safe Council? They just sent out a letter saying that they're trying to put together an organization to do trees for $350 each, but they need donations to help with that on private property.
So we have worked with Fire Safe Council, and Director Mowers took the tour of the Fire Safe Council work out there that has been accomplished. So they went through and did all the tree removal on all of the open space property that we have by our lakes, by Magalia Reservoir, on both sides of Magalia Reservoir, and at the treatment plant. And they went through and did all of that. They harvest them before they became blue stained, which means they're then ruined. And we're able to market those out to Sierra Pacific. I think Sierra Pacific took them all. And they were able to sell those for lumber. So we actually had no cost to those tree removals, and there was actually funds left over that they're going to be able to put those funds back into our lands to fix roads, culverts, and different things like that for better access. That process will include weed abatement throughout the next 3 years, and a replanting of that forest with a more hardier wood than what was there before to have some mitigation factors.
I wasn't asking about that.
So we're not going to have...
I already knew about that. All I was asking about was along the roads and our property in the district where you're talking about. I wondered what the cost was to do that, and if it's possible to work with the same outfit, Fire Safe Council, on clearing the trees around the roads and the small pieces of property we have and everything. I already knew what had happened up there and what they're doing.
Fine, that's good. I'm glad that you know that. So we are not going to work with them on the FEMA trees because those FEMA trees are paid at a 90 and 7.5%. So the 98% of the cost is covered through the state program and the FEMA program. So they're going to go through and do it on their program. So we're going to work with the FEMA
How
program.
much does it cost? The little Fire Safe Council said it was $1,600 for people on private property right now to have a tree drawn down and cut up and removed by private tree companies, and they wanted to get it down to $350. So if it was $1,600 and you get, what's the math there? How much is left of $1,600 if you get 90% of it? You don't even know.
98%.
Will FEMA pay that
$30. It's a much better cost value to PID to go with the FEMA tree removal than it is to go on an outside agency to remove those trees.
But you still haven't answered the question, how much do they,
Okay, so
how much will they swallow?
if it's $1,600, so they would pay if the tree removal was $1,600, FEMA and Cal OES would pay $1,568, and the district would pay $32.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. The next item is the road damage. So we own 5 miles of road. They have been inspected. There was no fire damage that was reported back on those roads, but 26 of the 30 roads have debris removal damage. So those will be covered by FEMA to go through and do the repairs necessary to bring those roads back up to standard. So that is a claim. We went through a site inspection on that, and so we're moving forward with that claim through FEMA. Dam repairs. We're looking to get our dam inspection at the same time that they do a damage assessment of the fire damage on the dam.
On Magalia, Kevin?
Yeah, on Magalia Dam. And we're going to have them look at Paradise just in case there might have been some damage on the foot of the dam or anything like that. There appears to be no visual damage at this point. There was a stump that might have caught on fire, but we want to make sure that there's a full dam inspection on that before we go forward with it.
Are you talking Genterra or the state?
Genterra.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. The state doesn't really do much
Okay.
at all.
They don't own a printing press.
PID facilities and equipment, so those were covered through insurance. We're still working through the insurance claim on that. As we get money back in, we are going to buy equipment as needed. So we're not going to go through and replace it just because we had it. We're going to buy equipment as needed. We're also looking to see if there's any opportunities that there might be hazard mitigation funds available or codes and upgrades. It's actually codes and upgrade standards that FEMA might pay for an additional upgrade to those equipments. So we're looking at that, and we're also looking to get some of the damage that was done to the treatment plant fixed. The water distribution storage tanks, those were all inspected by an outside engineer, and they came back that there was no fire damage to those. So that's actually a really good thing. And that inspection then will be covered by insurance because those tanks were insured. So it's a damage inspection that's covered by insurance. They were also on our FEMA claim also. Service lines, I think you got a good understanding of where we are with the service lines. And then that we're going to go through, we're looking to get a damage description done on the service lines that includes all the hazard mitigation upgrades on those damaged service lines. We're still going through some testing procedures to really get a good understanding of how much of each one of the service lines is damaged on a burnt structure. So right now our number has been between 53 and 42. And so we're doing some additional testing because we're looking to kind of get a solid number to bring forward with what we're calling as the 428 project to try to get those funds all paid up front for the full, to repair the whole project based on a contractor's price, so that we can then take that money and actually, if we get the money in hand, then we can actually do the money with our own labor at that point, and any monies that's left over we can actually use for mitigation purposes. So we're working through that. Waterworks Engineers is helping us on that, and it's a long process, but it's a very important process to get the right number, because you're kind of locking yourself into that number at the beginning. So you have to do a lot of the work at the beginning to get the big benefit at the end. 406 hazard mitigation, that is the things that we're trying to get paid through this project list that doesn't come out of the 404 grant, which I'll get into in a minute. So those items that we're trying to get paid through this 406 hazard mitigation are the BRES with the 2 steel tanks, the service line upgrade, which includes a brass meter, concrete box, and a backflow assembly, and our fences. We did do a fence inspection, and about 95% of our fences are damaged through fire, and we're looking to see if maybe there's some hazard mitigation funds that would make those fences a little more sturdy towards fire damage into the future. But we will have to replace all of our fencing within the district too. 404.
That's a cyclone fencing?
The what?
Cyclone fencing?
Is that what the name is?
Chain link.
Oh, chain link. Yes, that's the chain link fencing.
Same thing.
Same thing, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know the proper name. And then we have 404 hazard mitigation. 404 hazard mitigation is a pot of money that's set aside by FEMA to take care of any project that has mitigating factors to any disaster. So it doesn't have to be a fire-related disaster. It could be flood, it can be earthquake, and it can actually be drought is one of the ones also. And they take a certain percentage of the total claim for the disaster and set it aside. And then the counties that are affected by the disaster have the first priority to that money. And the counties that are affected by this disaster are Butte, Ventura, and Los Angeles, which we're kind of competing with them, which kind of makes me mad. But these are projects that are to mitigate against damage, but what you're mitigating against wasn't damaged during the fire. So 406 mitigates and improves projects that were damaged by the fire. 404 mitigates against projects that were not damaged to the fire. So we have 4 projects that are in for 404 hazard mitigation. Those include the service line upgrades. And the reason why we have that in there is because we know that there's only a certain percentage of service lines that were technically damaged by the fire. And that's where we're going back to that percentage, that 40 to 60%. We're in that range. The additional 40% are quote unquote not damaged because they are coming up clean, right? So we're looking to get this hazard mitigation funds to upgrade those service lines to mitigate against fire damage into the future and have that bucket of money pay for those upgrades. So that's in there. That's a fluid one based on how much we get out of the one bucket. We're going to try to get the other out of the other bucket. We're looking at a hydraulic modeling of the distribution system and distribution upgrades, which might include treatment plant upgrades or distribution line upgrades. So what we're looking at is to develop a hydraulic model that shows the flows, stress that model against some type of fire damage or opening up hydrants or looking for fire flows that are low in certain spots, and then mitigating against those that low flow, or if the system is stressed enough that it depressurizes again, to see if maybe if we upgrade the treatment plant to increase the capacity, that maybe that would then keep the system pressurized during that stress point in time of another fire or disaster. So it's a phased approach. So we're looking at phase 1 is developing this distribution, this hydraulic model. Phase 2 is then implementing projects to mitigate against some of the deficiencies in the system that show in those hydraulic models. The next one is a high hazard flood study and Magalia Dam replacement. This one is looking at Magalia Dam from a flood standpoint. So looking at a 100-year flood, how would the Magalia Dam handle that, and how would the spillway handle that? The spillway shoots directly at our treatment plant. So if the spillway takes out our treatment plant, then that's a pretty big, significant effect to Paradise, and it's a pretty significant effect to replace the treatment plant. And then also all the downstream users or the downstream people that would be flooded if Magalia Dam did fail. So we're putting that as a hazard mitigation to mitigate against flood. And that includes looking at the high hazard flood, or looking at the study to see what stressing the dam against a 100-year flood, and then looking at mitigating it, which means replacing the dam with a new dam and replacing the spillway at a different location.
We've had at least 2 incidents the last 2 years where both the spillway was full and the flow device in the dam itself was full and shooting out. But the water pressure wasn't in the spillway. The spillway goes down and all right. The problem with that, if you're going to look into fixing something, is a 40-inch pipe going over the creek that has no rebars in it. It is just concrete. And as long as I've been on the board, and even before, we were trying to get those replaced, and nothing's ever happened. And they should be part of your claim. Those 2 pillars in there, and reinforcing, replacing, whatever for that, because that main is what goes down.
So that's
except to B, and there's no other supply for it. If we lose that thing in a flood event or whatever event because it isn't strong enough, then
that's already in a hazard mitigation grant fund that was done with the Oroville disaster. So that is already in there, and that includes the additional A-zone pipe that goes around for redundancy for that exact purpose. So we are that's also included in the hazard mitigation fund.
The design that came up was as part of the $17 million project that failed, was that it was running pipe all over the place, and all they had to do was fix the supports underneath the pipe. And that is not a multi-million-dollar deal. And it's a simple fix, actually, for anybody. And I don't understand it why you're talking about it here and all that. It's something that really needs to be fixed. As far as the flood thing, the dam has been able to handle the water. And one of the reasons is that, like, the dam has been pulled down because of the fall season. There's plenty of room in Magalia Reservoir for a lot of water, and it can come through those 2 openings. But the water in that spillway is not going to knock out the water treatment plant. All you have to do is go up there and look at it.
I've looked at
it. It's not. All the years it's been there, and they've had 2 water treatment plants in there. They fix that thing for it works very well. And I don't think there's any 100-year storm even that will do it.
Didn't we get approval for that grant already? So we've already got approved for that grant, but I think the disaster basically kind of set everything back a little bit. That's what's happened.
Grant for what?
To replace that line, the pipe that you're talking about.
No, I'm not talking about replacing the line. I'm talking about the propping, the
Well,
structures
it's all a package. It's a package. You replace the pipe and the supports at the same time.
I'll look into that.
Yeah.
I'll look into it. I'll talk to Sammy about it. He's intimately familiar with that. I do think it's a worthwhile project to continue to move forward with, though, and we'll take that into consideration on the high hazard flood study and Nothing set in stone on what that is going to mean to replace. It's looking at all the hazards associated with a flood event, and then how to mitigate against that flood event.
Well, the 100-year flood thing is basically, and I think Sammy will back this up, that's a good educated guess by somebody on how much rain and period and everything else. It's a little bit of a formula. It usually doesn't stand up. Sammy's not going to say anything. Look at it.
And then we are also, we've got our community disaster loan in. There was some, always little hiccups here and there, but I think that we've gotten it pretty well close, and that those monies should be coming in shortly, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's just currently in the review process from FEMA, so everything, it's kind of in their court at this point.
Great. And then our long-term business plan, we have an intertie project with Chico. I think Dustin's going to cover that here in about through his legal report, so I'll just leave that as is right now. And we still are in communications with PG&E, with the Kunkel Reservoir, and with the Miocene Canal users to see if there's some solution that we can be part of up there, and to see if there's any opportunities for PID to expand their business model when it comes to those facilities. And if there's an opportunity, then that'll be brought back to the board. But just being at the table kind of keeps us in their mind that there might be an opportunity at that point.
I was getting some gas Sunday, and I ended up talking to a PG&E employee, and he had been part of the study or replacing the Miocene Canal, not the ditch, but the pipe that had burned up. And he said they'd come in with estimates between $10 and $20 million. The $20 million part would be if the state makes it so that they have to make it earthquake safe. So that would cause them to tear the whole thing out and rebuild it, and they'd like to be able to fix it, but it's still close to $10 million. And I don't know, and we were talking, I don't know how you'd ever justify, with the amount of water that goes down there, that kind of money into it. And he made a comment that I thought was interesting because so much stuff is coming around PG&E employees. He said 600 employees lost their homes in Paradise in the fire. And he was basically asking people to not get after PG&E employees and understand that a lot of like the power, he was telling me about the power outage that hadn't been made public yet. And it was an interesting conversation because basically and I can't tell you the man's name because I never asked for it. He said that that's a San Francisco decision and people out in the field are not very happy about it, the actual employees having to do the work and everything afterwards. So for what that's worth, there's some information for you.
Spillway investigation, we're still moving forward with that. We have submitted our initial plan, but they haven't got back to us. So at this point in time, we're just planning on actually just doing some increased monitoring on that at this point, which was discussed early on, and then making sure that the chute that comes out is clear, and then the pathway down at the toe of the dam is clear of any debris. So we're going to continue monitoring that and making sure that there's a clear path so that we're not running into some issues this winter. Legislative budget request, I thought it was October 21st. What's the date now?
October 25th.
October 25th.
4 days max, but
we
can't trust those guys.
It's like pulling teeth to get money out.
Yeah, moving target.
But we're planning on getting that money here shortly. Long-term capital projects, water rights license and permits. We're still moving forward with that. There will be probably a change based on our long-term business plan moving forward. Dustin has a good idea he's got a good pulse on that portion of our issues. Magalia Dam, like I said, we're working through maybe trying to get some funding for that. Replacement of BRES, we're working through the funding on that. Mainline replacement, we're looking to get funding for that. A-zone pipeline and generator upgrade, we're still moving forward with that hazard mitigation fund and trying to get some supplemental funds to handle the local share of that so that we can maybe have a no-cost project on that. I can tell you right now our generators they're being taxed. The generator here had an issue early one morning about switching over when the power did go off, so we had to go out there and manually switch it over. And the generator at the treatment plant is having some coughing issues. And then our generator at the A-Zone pipe, pump station 2, failed. And so right now, if power went out, I don't think we would have water in A-Zone. But we're working, they're troubleshooting that constantly and trying to get replacement parts in for that. So we're going to look for some other funding to get some portable generators in here so that we have them on site, so that we can pull them out to those sites if necessary to back up the backups. And so, but they're being taxed with these. If this is our new normal, generators are going to be, we're going to rely on them heavily. I can just tell you that.
So are we communicating with PG&E about critical infrastructure, specifically around the generators?
We have.
With the PSPS events?
Yeah, we have.
I know.
Yeah.
I think we just have to keep.
We'll keep on them hard. Yeah.
Squeaky wheel.
Yeah, we will be. NPDES permit, Sammy's been in touch with the water board, and they've given us kind of a little bit of a reprieve on that.
This is not going to be a priority until middle of next year.
Yeah. So, and we're close to that, into that study. We've done a lot of work on that study.
It's
So.
really close to being completed.
Yeah. So that's my report. I'm sorry it took a little long, but I thought it was important to get all that information out to you guys, especially about the FEMA project. So. Any questions?
Yeah, when do we have a break?
We can have a break right now. How about that? Let's take a 10-minute break. We'll reconvene at 8.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Okay, Ward. We're going to reconvene here, and Ward had a comment.
Thank you again for the time. Just other than Director Kellogg, you all were not here a couple of years ago when the topic of mainline replacement came up, when we had a 200-year series of complete replacement of all the mains to change it to 100 years or 50 years or something. And the reason part of that came up was we have added several hydrants for fire suppression and service without having the adequate size line at that hydrant. So there was a complaint from CAL FIRE, previously Paradise Fire Department, that we needed to do something as a water company to get adequate supply at those hydrants. So the question to the board was, do we change the timing of when we replace all of these mains and get an adequate supply? And I stand up as the public and say to you, the board, if the fire department ever says we lost a life or a structure because we didn't have water, because the water main supplying this hydrant wasn't adequate, it's on you. That's what I said. That still holds true today. You are our board. You have to make decisions on behalf of us and our water needs. Some of that is fire suppression. That gets me back to the issue of the dam. We don't drink the water in the dam. We drink Paradise Lake. That could easily be plumbed into all the hydrants with all new lines, all the right size, and have adequate water supply. Now, after 2008, be reminded that FEMA wrote 17 technical sheets to address Northern California's fire and fire suppression situation. Tech sheet number 17 was infrastructure, and the first comment there was you should have an adequate and reliable water supply for fire suppression. 10 years later, our hydrants still went dry. The one that was right where I was spending 12 hours in this town was at 310. No water. Couldn't fill a truck. The only place they could go was all the way up to DeSabla to get water, and they weren't going that far. They were still working on making sure people got out of town. Our fire department. So remembering Supervisor Yamaguchi and his grandiose plans to fix things that were related to infrastructure, he wanted to change Suicide Point to Lookout Point. And it took several years, but we did do that. We haven't had a suicide since there yet. Ain't gonna. There's a guardrail already. You can't drive a car off Suicide Point anymore. It's Lookout Point. It's gorgeous. It's very attractive. It's a real asset in our community. Paving Skyway all the way up to Butte Meadows. In the event we ever need to evacuate and go north, a rock and dirt-packed road just ain't going to cut it. And eventually, we got it done. But his third and most important project was 4 lanes across the dam. And he said, if we do this, we will do probably a reduction of head-ons and traffic delays for a flat tire or any kind of an accident or injury there, so that people from Magalia trying to get to work aren't held up for 3 or 4 hours. Because it's a nightmare trying to get a tow truck in there when all the lanes are closed and there's only 2. The dam's been a problem. Now, frankly, I do not agree that it's unsafe from a seismic safety standpoint. We ain't got no earthquakes up here, and we're in one of the lowest categories in the state for earthquakes that would cause a problem with the dam. But siding on the error side of safety here, like we do with the quality of our water, the better option here would be to build a new dam. Not where the old one is, but right behind it. Make it 20 or 24 feet higher. Have 5 times more water in storage than there is now, even when this is full. Have 2 lanes coming into Magalia, 2 lanes coming out of Magalia. Anybody ever been to Southern California? Out on the flatlines where there's nothing happening, you got a road that goes south and one that goes north, and they're right next to each other with a guardrail. But when you go over the Grapevine, you can't see the other road. They're separated by a mile. Why? Because they've had so many incidents down there on the old road that if you had a flat tire or an accident, traffic was backed up in both directions for hours. Now you have that, a truck delay on one side, the other side is still going 70 miles an hour. If we had 2 roads across the dam, a brand new one on the uphill side, we'd have 5 times more water in that reservoir. You could plumb the whole thing into pipes for the hydrants and not drink a bit of it. We'd never run out of drinking water. We'd never run out of water for fire suppression. And we'd have 4 lanes across there, 2 to come into Magalia, 2 to get out. Makes it much safer from the standpoint of evacuating the town. That's a little beyond what Yamaguchi suggested, but he said we should have 4 lanes across the dam. I'm saying we could do better than just that.
Thanks, Ward. I'd like to make a comment on your talk. It's really sad what happened to us in 85 deaths, but we lost the water, the mains failed, and depressurized the system. And I've asked for years that we have money to replace mains, and we don't have $1 in our budget this year. I asked for money for the mains again, and I was told it's not a priority. So I thank you for pointing out why it's a priority. And we have them leaking all over town right now. We've got, I don't know how many streams, but we need to work on the mains, and we need to work on them for a long time. The last time we got anything done, we had grant money to actually fix the mains and replace them. And we got quite a few feet those few years. But since then, we haven't done much of anything. And every time we talk about replacing the mains, we come up with B Reservoir and $7 million to have 2 tanks, or $14 million to have 2 tanks, and instead there's not a dime for mains, for replacing mains. We always come up with these projects. We want to replace the little 2 pillars underneath the 40-inch main, which is fine where it's at, and it's in good shape. But no, there's no money for that, except we'll run around and maybe put $30,000 or $50,000 in making a new 40-inch main that goes around the circle. You got me started. I didn't really need to say anything about this tonight.
Okay, thank you, Ward. Appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to move on to number 6, I believe, Treasurer's Report. Ross?
All right. So starting with number 1 there, our total cash position as of the end of September was $2,215,000. Into number 2, we've had our first debt service payment this year, roughly $300,000 to BB&T. Our next one is due the very beginning of November on the Capital One loan. So that'll be paid here in a couple weeks. On the operational overview, we continue to process customer requests to disconnect. We've actually seen this month that that's slowed quite a bit. We were seeing about an average of 150 per month for the past 4 or 5 months. This month we only had 62. So I think that's a good sign. Hopefully that'll continue to slow so more customers will remain with us. Hopefully that's kind of becomes the new normal and it continues to drop off. Continuing to collect fees for interim water supply installation. We had about 174 additional this month, bringing the total to 1,142 total devices that we've processed requests for. And we've brought in a total $342,000 in those fees so far this year. For residential fire flow testing, we've processed about 87 this month for a total of 341 requests, to date, and about $26,000 in related fees for those. As Kevin mentioned, we're continuing to work with the state of California and FEMA and insurance to fund the recovery process. And a big piece of that is the state backfill funding, which, as you mentioned, we are expecting here on the 25th. So that'll be a nice cash infusion here, hopefully by the end of the month.
They just didn't say which 25th.
Yeah. Hopefully of October. Yeah. Financial summary, just kind of on a broad overview. From an operational standpoint, we're at about a $477,000 decrease in cash, with an additional about $1.3 million in recovery-related expenditures. So we're looking at about $1.8 million decrease in cash so far this year. Again, that'll be offset by the state funds coming in here at the end of the month. Revenue summary. Do you guys have any questions on this? I wanted to highlight the water revenue on the next page if there's no questions so far. Well, you probably see it.
Can you see it on your guys'?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So just keep it there.
All right, cool. So from a water revenue for the service charge, you can see there the dark blue line on the far left. That's our actual service revenue. Compared to the red line is what we had budgeted for each month, bringing in on the collections of what we bill out. So as you can see, that's about half of what we've seen in previous years. That's the green, purple, and orange lines on that graph. The thing that I wanted to point out here is that we had originally budgeted based on a flat monthly collection of about $191,000. What we're seeing instead is that in the months that we send the bills out, the collections are quite a bit lower than that. So you'll see in July and September, we're quite a bit below what we had budgeted for the collections. Those were the months that we sent bills out, so bi-monthly. But then if you look at the month of August, the collections on those service charges are actually quite a bit higher. So it kind of nets out to be just about what we've budgeted so far for the year. So the total budget to date was $573,000. We're at $532 collected so far. So we're about $40,000 short. But based on that trend of seeing higher collections in the month after billing, I'm expecting that that'll be back up to budget next month.
And as more people get cleared, right? So then we get the extra $21 a month.
Yeah. So we are returning people to the active rate once their service line is cleared.
How many people are if any, are being billed for quantity now?
Nothing on the quantity.
Nobody yet. Okay.
Just the service charge.
So you still have any people that we don't know where they're at? I mean, as far as postal deliveries and returns and.
Kevin, can you talk into the mic?
We have a bucket full of return mail that we're working through on a monthly basis.
Any questions on the operational expense summary here? Or debt service, that $300,000 that we paid out, and then just a summary of our recovery-related expenditures. We're about $1.3 million so far. $200,000 of that is our supplies and services for recovery-related expenses. The biggest chunk is that professional service and engineering, the $1 million. What that consists of is about $200,000 in the smoke cleaning restoration fees that we paid out this year. About $340,000 in mutual aid that we've paid. $34,000 in legal fees, and $445,000 in project management costs. And the last piece there is about $110,000 in water sampling. Outstanding contracts. I think that just about does it. I can answer any questions that you guys have at this point.
B Reservoir, $773,964. The engineering study by Waterworks. What did we buy?
That was the plan, the specifications for the B reservoir and the A-zone pipeline and pump station from last week.
Going down the Skyway and all that.
That was all pre-fire, and that's what we used to apply for these additional grants, that work that was done.
Yeah. Terrible idea. Running down Skyway, pumping water 100 feet in the air on the other line. His gravity fed, it goes around the mountain the other way behind Magalia. No problem, we have a right-of-way there.
The one thing with that is that was 100% forgiven through SRF. So that whole expense was paid through pretty much a grant.
Very good. Anything else? Any other questions? None. Okay.
Oh, no, I got one. The
go ahead.
NPDES permit. I just don't understand the charges there. The NPDES permit, it's still good, and we're sampling out of the Magalia Reservoir at different points, right?
So that was the project to revise your discharge permit from the backwash ponds for the water plant into the Magalia Reservoir. And the issue was that the current discharge permit has very low limits on aluminum and one other constituent.
Metro.
Byproducts of BCM. And you weren't meeting those limits. And so that project was to revise those limits based on the dilution factor of Magalia Reservoir. And we got very nearly to the point of having those limits revised. And that was in October of last year when we were almost to that point. At that time, the Regional Water Quality Control Board sort of suspended their enforcement action on that permit in deference to the fire. And like I reported earlier, I had some conversations with them, and they said it won't be on their priority list until the middle of next year. And so at some point, that does need to get picked back up and completed so that your permit can be revised and allow continuing to discharge the way you're discharging right now from the backwash ponds in the Magalia Reservoir. But it's really just a matter of revising the permit to reflect the real world conditions. There's nothing that'll change operationally for you. Like I said, it's nearly done. The regional board actually agreed to the permit change. We were just they asked for a little bit more data. We had taken the data, and it was just the last, bit of taking that to the house and getting it, the permit rewritten. And that requires some work from us, but also work from the Regional Water Quality Control Board to rewrite the permit. And they said they won't get back around to that until next year.
With our low flows through the water treatment plant, we haven't had any violations of the permit, have we?
So you're still backwashing, though, and the concentrations of aluminum and BDCM are similar. So it's a concentration-based limit, not a mass-based limit. So even though the flows are lower, the concentrations are the same, and so the permit and the compliance is similar. I haven't seen any data from sampling that's been taken from this year, but I would expect it would be similar. You're still probably not in compliance with your NPDES permit, but the NPDES permit, like I said, is quite ready to be changed, and it's already been agreed to. There's just that last little bit of getting the paperwork done that got stopped, and again, the regional board has to pick that back up in their workload, and they said that won't happen.
In our work up there, aren't we moving the testing up in the upper part of the Magalia Reservoir, up toward the dam, to get them to let us pull the sample there from the ponds up there, run a pipe up there, and pull the samples and have it be diluted?
Correct.
Yes. And that should make us okay with the
Correct.
permit?
And that sampling has all been done, and we're okay. It's just the permit has to be rewritten.
Okay, so basically we're at home, we don't have to worry about it other than them doing the paperwork.
Right, and us giving them whatever they need to finish rewriting that permit.
Okay.
As far as the information from the studies.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Any other questions?
Nope. You ready to?
Yeah, do we have a motion to accept the?
I'll make a motion to accept.
I second.
A second? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Oh,
Sorry, Ward.
Ward, you're going to wear your legs out.
No, I'm on your side again, pal. So the NDPE's permit issue has come up for many years here. And at one point with a different board, other than Director Kellogg, this snowballed from $6 or $7 million to $9 million to over $12 million for a treatment plant to solve a problem that isn't necessary because he has some common sense. So did Director Kellogg. He knew that there was an alternative. He had investigated numerous alternatives, and he was the nay vote on this board for several years against that $12 million waste. Thank you, Director Kellogg.
Thank you, Ward.
Thank you, Ward.
So did the motion carry?
Did we?
Are we good?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, let's move to 7, expense approval report. Any discussion on the checks? Questions?
Oh, I'll start then. Page 35, Buttes Pipe, backflow assemblies, $6,005.41. And that was, I don't know. It's interesting. I really don't know what it's costing us, Jim, anymore to assemble those things. In other words, what does it cost to assemble, the cost of labor and thing? Actually figuring a cost for the labor that somebody else is paying for, because it is a real cost to somebody. And what does it cost to assemble one on hand?
We've estimated the cost of $500 and
$546.76.
that includes materials. Yeah. So we did the cost estimate on basing it on the price that we charge the customer as our estimated cost. Some cost more to install, some cost less to install it based on the environment. And so at this point, we're pretty comfortable that the price that we set it at is the price it costs.
As we're selling them at cost.
Yep.
Okay. The next one down is California Water Service. In September, we had mutual aid, labor and equipment, mutual aid, labor and equipment to the tune of $82,699. And we didn't have the equipment or labor to do whatever this was going for?
That was when they were here back in, was that November, December? So this was kind of the catch-up billing for that, the final invoices that they had sent us.
Last year's billing?
Mm-hmm.
It was the mutual aid cost that we had to reimburse that special district or water district.
Yeah.
And it's reimbursable to us through the FEMA claim, correct?
Yep. And so those invoices are already submitted to FEMA for reimbursement.
The next one is on page 36. It's vendor FGL Environmental, and it's water sampling, and it comes out at, you have to go over to the next page, to $17,041. Do we get any kind of special price on these water samples being run through that lab? I didn't find any. There may be another vendor in here somewhere, but I didn't find one on water sampling.
Yeah, we've negotiated a price and a turnaround time for those to be express, run through the express, which is 5-day turnaround, and there's a PID only price that we do receive.
And it's reimbursable as well.
It's reimbursable through the category B emergency protection measures.
Okay, thank you. The next one's on page 37. It's Hertz Rentals for $4,888.48. What do we? It said equipment rental, but it doesn't say what kind of equipment.
We've rented several pieces of equipment. We rented excavator. We're renting trucks because we don't have enough service trucks in our fleet to provide work trucks in the field, and so we're renting trucks to use as service trucks, and
backhoe.
We're renting backhoe, 2 backhoes. I believe they're both from Hertz.
Have we bought any new equipment with the insurance money?
So we just finalized today. Clint and I reviewed all the bids that were submitted, so we'll be bringing that forward to Kevin soon.
What did you bring forward? Did you buy some equipment?
We have not yet.
but you're looking to buy some equipment.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Any?
I'm not-
He's still looking.
Okay. I just want to get through the
Okay.
page. I'm not quite there. U.S. Bank Corporate Payment System, $6,098. What do they do for us?
It's our credit card. What page is he on?
42.
How many copies are there of the credit card?
Is it the credit card machine or is it the actual credit card?
Credit card.
Yeah, the employee cards.
Oh, the machine.
No, it's our credit card. So employee cards for purchasing out in the field or making purchases for whatever they need to make purchases for. All managers have a card. Purchasing manager has a card.
No, Mickey does.
Yeah,
But she's manager.
Just managers.
Yeah.
Just managers, and then the purchasing agent.
Is it the annual fee or is that?
I guess
These
it's
are actual charges, right?
The actual
Charges
charges.
on the card, right?
monthly fees and stuff. I don't see any coffee shop in here.
Well, that's a good thing, right?
Office maintenance. That's office maintenance.
It's just coffee.
Maintenance and supplies.
I'm done.
Are you done?
Done.
Is that what you said? You're done?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Did you have some?
I do not.
Oh, okay. Well, do we have a motion, or can we have a motion to approve checks?
I would make a motion to approve the checks as written.
I'll second.
Do we have to list all the checks to make the motion?
It's helpful for the record.
Yeah, if you could read.
Do I have to list every single one of those?
No, you just read the language in the agenda.
It says between checks number
Oh, okay. So
5308 through, yeah.
Approval of general fund checks, numbers 53808 through 53900.
So just for clarity, you are moving the language in your agenda, right?
Yes.
So moved. I'm helping you.
You have to read the whole
Say
thing.
so moved.
Or say,
Read the whole thing?
You have to read all the
Here,
or say so moved.
we got you.
I move that we pay the approval of general fund checks numbers 53808 through 53900 for the month of September 19, totaling $993,195.31, exclusive of the voided checks numbers 53842, 53880, and 53881.
And authorization.
And authorization of a similar amount allowing or adjusting for extraordinary budget or board-approved items during the month of October.
Good job.
Thank you.
I will
Greg.
second that.
Any comments from the public? Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have a second?
I second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, legal report.
Good evening, Board. I have 3 topics for you. 2 should be fairly quick, and 1 maybe a little longer discussion. First, Director Kellogg, you've asked poor Emily, put her on the spot about Bay Delta bills. So,
She said she talked to you about.
yeah, so let me tell you what that is. There is a meeting once a month that I attend. It's almost always me. That is hosted by NACWA, Northern California Water Association. They are, as their name implies, kind of the aqua for Northern California. You are not currently a member of NACWA, but I believe you have been in the past, the long distant past, but not currently. But that doesn't mean that they don't help you and help your interests. The meeting is a group of lobbyists, other water district managers, attorneys. A lot of times they're state representatives and folks that attend. And it's a discussion about the Bay Delta watershed, which sounds like, San Francisco Bay Delta, but it's actually the entire watershed. So that obviously encompasses our neck of the world here, with Little Butte Creek being a tributary to the Bay Delta. So we discuss pending legislation and instruct lobbyists to take positions. We discuss litigation of interest to water right holders in Northern California. We interface with state agencies on all manner of state agency type things, such as grant funding, habitat restoration projects. This group was, one of many that supported us last legislative session when we were asking for backfill funding. So it's a meeting that covers a lot of different topics that some are more directly of interest to PID than others, but they're all matters that in one way or another would affect you as a water right holder in the watershed. So it's typically one meeting a month in Sacramento, and I think it's split 15 ways. I think I have that number right. Amongst 15 of our different clients, PID pays 1/15 of that. So any questions? Further information? Good. Next item is, crossing my fingers, hope we're nearing resolution of a matter of pending litigation related to the Public Records Act. And we were successful. This is a matter that PID was joined with two other irrigation districts, South Feather and Nevada Irrigation District. So you were splitting the cost three ways. We were successful in that litigation, and we are winding it down, pursuing attorney's fees, which we will be awarded attorney's fees. The only question is how much. So I'm hoping that sometime in the next month or two I'll be able to report. I expect it to be about in the $40,000 range or so would be PID's share of the reimbursement. So that's, any questions on that item?
How much did you charge us to get the 40,000?
Well, the total fees incurred are about 130 something. That's the request. So you're 1/3 of that.
The whole fees are 130,000.
Which I thought was incredibly reasonable.
I'm sure you did.
The judge will determine that, but no, I discounted, did not charge the district for over 100 hours worth of work. So
10,000 on it, I guess.
No, 100 hours is not 10,000.
No, I meant you're hoping you'll get what, 120,000 back, and we spent 140,000.
No, you spent about 130, and I'm hoping we get 100% of that back.
Oh, okay. That sounds much better.
Yeah. And your share is 1/3 of that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, final item is, as Kevin mentioned, the feasibility study matter for the what I call the Ridge Valley intertie concept. First of all, Kevin and I had what I'd call a kickoff meeting a couple weeks ago. I thought it was a good discussion. We just kind of sat around the room, walked through the scope of work and what our expectations were for the consultant team. And there was some information requests, that kind of homework assignments that were handed out, so I think Kevin's on that. But since that, surprisingly to me, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but this matter has gotten to be quite political. So that's the reason I want to provide an update, because I'm sure that you will be a question on it. So remember, in this room last month, maybe 2 months now, we had a lengthy discussion about why this feasibility is important in and of itself. Set aside whether you ultimately, way down the road, decide to move forward with this project. And that's a big may, right? But just the act of doing the feasibility study, in my opinion, is very important for the district, because the state has an interest on this consolidation path. And this feasibility study is important to show that we have we have control of our own destiny here. We don't need the state mandating consolidation or some other alternative that we don't like. So the feasibility study is very important in that dialogue. It is being funded three ways, remember. PID's share is 25%, about $35,000 is my recollection. Cal Water is also 25%, and then the county is picking up 50%, about 70-something thousand. County took it to the Board of Supervisors meeting last month, and the county needed to pass it on a 4-to-1 vote because it involved a budget amendment. Even though it's grant funding, they've got some kind of strange process involved. I was fortunate that I talked to Supervisor Debbie Lucero. I was at a meeting and this issue came up. It was on another topic, but it came up. So I chatted with her about it. And she was on the fence with her vote, and she ultimately decided to vote yes. So she was our fourth vote. Supervisor Ritter, by the way, was the no. Since then, Supervisor Lucero has stated that she wants to reconsider her vote. And she's used that reconsideration to try to leverage some prior work that Cal Water had done. Director Kellogg may remember, in fact, I think you raised this when we discussed this last. Years ago, both PID and Cal Water did some very preliminary study of an intertie. Back then, right, it was a truly different world. We were thinking PID had a drought problem. We needed water from the valley. So the water was coming uphill, not downhill. So there was some preliminary work. I don't even think it rose to, an engineering type analysis. It was just kind of scratching the surface on alignment and volumes, those types of things. So Supervisor Lucero asked for that work product from Cal Water. And I don't know what Cal Water's going to do, but it appears they're probably going to say no. At least they haven't provided it thus far. So this matter will be back on the supervisor's agenda next Tuesday. It appears Supervisor Connolly will not be there, so there will be only 4 members. Supervisor Connolly was already one of the aye votes. So reading the tea leaves, and it's always dangerous to count votes before they happen, but we are concerned that we may not have the votes to continue this matter forward, and in which case the county will have to provide a notice of termination to the consultant and, unwind the contract. So I've been talking with some of the other supervisors. I think Supervisor Teeter has been very helpful. Assemblymember Gallagher is very helpful. They're pretty disappointed in some of the supervisors. I should have mentioned I happened to be at the Butte County Water Commission meeting, again on another matter, and this item came up. And I was surprised because there was perhaps 10 speakers that got up and had questions and concerns. And the speakers were primarily from the environmental community. So you had Butte Environmental Council and Aqua Alliance and a new environmental group that I'm not familiar with called, I think they're called Environmental Defense Foundation of Northern California. I would say that, they all raised good questions and issues that when I got up and spoke said these are the reasons why you do a feasibility study, right? I mean, you don't speculate and then decide whether to pursue a project or not. You have questions that you then try to answer in a feasibility study, and then you determine if your project's feasible or not. So it was well received by the commissioners there. Supervisor Lucero was there, and I talked to her afterwards, and that's when she mentioned that she's really after these technical memos that Cal Water had put together. So that brings me to next Tuesday. I think, Kevin, you're going to be there, right? And you may want to consider, maybe you, Mark, attending as well. You'll be out of town. I would encourage you to consider that, to consider speaking on behalf of PID. As I said, I think it's important, setting aside whether this is something way down the road you decide to do, just the the act of undertaking the study is important. So,
Dustin,
yes.
there's records here that she can tap on that. We're a public agency. She can tap the history of it here and ask for them, and she'll get them within
Yes.
3 days.
So we don't have all of the information she is after.
No, nobody does because it didn't get that far. But,
Well, we don't have whatever work product that Cal Water has, we don't have it.
We never saw it here.
Correct.
At that time. But it was also pushing water down and then pumping it back in the season. And we got preliminary costs, which were in the multi-million-dollar frame, and we didn't have any, since we were trading water and stuff, there was no cash flow to make the thing work. And that's why it didn't last very long. We didn't have any way to pay for it, so. The reason I voted for it in the end was what you mentioned, the political thing to hopefully convince the state of California that they don't want to force us to merge with another water district. And it wasn't my practical thing that I complained about and all that. That still stands for me. But I went along because this was politics, and it looks like I don't know. You never know what's going to happen when it's politics.
Dustin, is there a reason?
Environmental stuff.
Excuse me, Bill. Is there a reason why Cal Water is not providing that report?
If there is, I haven't heard it.
You're not privy to that.
I take that back. In that, so I don't know the full reason, but one of the concerns their consultant expressed in this kickoff meeting was that really was a different project.
Mm-hmm.
So it needs to be, if Cal Water wishes to release them, the consultant wanted to be able to give a presentation to the Board of Supervisors to provide context. So that was the perspective of the consultant. They didn't just want these out there and then these environmental groups taking them and doing whatever they do with them. They wanted to be able to kind of shape them and provide the story.
I wanted to ask you about the VINA group. I don't know the full title of them. The new, where they've gone together for groundwater recharge and the whole thing, and so it takes in, what, a third of the county?
You're referring to the proposed Tuscan Water District?
Yeah, and it goes all around Chico and takes in part of Chico. And,
right.
And they're all on pumps or wells, or I don't think they're on ditches, I don't know.
So this is not really related to this topic. I guess indirectly it is because they're forming primarily for SGMA, the groundwater, Sustainable Groundwater Act. But they would be about a 90,000 acre new district. I guess potentially they could be a water purchaser, although they're predominantly ag deliveries, if not exclusively, so there wouldn't be a need for treated water, which is kind of our objective here. Remember, we could participate in raw water sales, but they're not as lucrative, and I don't think they're going to sustain the district long term.
Got to make the grade financial.
So we've kind of, while that's still an option and something that we would consider and we'd bring to you if that came to fruition, if there was a possibility, we've kind of focused on the treated water delivery, treated water transfer concept as the preferred approach at this time.
What's plan B for this district?
So fortunately, if the vote is negative for the feasibility study from the county's perspective, there's I think a 30-day wind down of the contract. And it was a 4-month project to begin with, so it's not like it was some very extensive long-term work effort. So they may be able to progress quite a ways. And then Cal Water, I believe, is still committed. PID is still committed. So we may just visit the scope of work again and scale that down to whatever our remaining balance is of funds and just see how far we can get. That's one option. We could, you could reconsider and fund, an additional portion to get us to the finish line if that's necessary. That's another option. We may be able to, and Kevin and I talked about this today, that this consolidation study, the state is going to fund that. We may be able to talk to the state and say, we have an existing feasibility study that's in progress that is related, although slightly different perspective of what you're after. Why don't we use state funds to finish this work product?
Is South Feather one of your customers?
Yes.
I was thinking about this the other day. Since they're a special district like we are, that might be the one of choice to consider merging, since they're very financially sound and they have power and water, and they could pick up on some of these projects that we've turned down because we don't have anybody on staff with power.
You're making me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We should discuss that in closed session. But at a very high level, we are going to very tightly control, to the extent we can, the state's consolidation study. And we, again, to the extent we can, will encourage multiple different consolidation options, some of which will be more preferred compared to others.
So we have to come up with something for that $7 million. We have to get some sort of.
We have to
thing.
participate.
Come up with
Yeah.
Right.
We have to.
We don't have to have a result. We just have to participate.
No, I know we have to participate. We have to, just like we did on the Intertide, really, as far as I'm concerned, that was just politics to help get the $7 million and to show them. But now, if that's going away, then we need to figure out something else. And that means a study, maybe a crazy one. I don't know. You guys are better at politics than I am.
Well, the feasibility study, in my mind, is critical for this district. So we'll see what happens next week, and then we can revisit, come back, and we'll talk about it and see where we can go.
Kevin and I have a meeting Monday
Yeah.
with Assemblymember Gallagher. We'll have a much clearer sense, I think, of what to expect for Tuesday.
Right.
And I think the Assembly member is very supportive. So he, too, may have some ideas.
And I have a meeting with Division of Drinking Water, head of Northern California, tomorrow morning that I'll bring up the feasibility study option, because they're the ones that are supposed to be controlling the feasibility study on the other side. So.
Okay.
Is Nielsen supporting this?
Yeah.
So we got two Republicans. Did we find a Democrat somewhere? After all, the legislature's pretty much Democrat.
I know that there was support for us through bipartisan, through the Assembly and through the Senate and the Governor's office, and with the help of our lobbyist who was with the Teamsters group, he was able to gather a lot of support from the other side of the aisle.
Okay.
So I will be there, and I did present this to the Chico Chamber on Monday morning, and or Monday or Tuesday morning, they were recommending to their executive board to write a letter in support for us. So the Chico Chamber was in support of this project for PID. So we'll have some support there also.
Great. The Chico Chamber, did you say?
Chico Chamber.
Chico Chamber, very good.
Yes.
That's
They
good.
must have an environmentalist somewhere.
Right.
And I have relationship with I use that term loosely because at many points in time we are at odds, but I do have relationship with the environmental community, those groups that I mentioned. And I plan to reach out to them. I did raise some eyebrows with my discussion to provide that broader perspective of why PID is interested in and of itself of just completing the feasibility study. And I had a few phone calls following that meeting from folks that just wanted to understand that better. They just think that this is a Cal Water grab, basically. I think that's the primary motivating concern here that is generating this political issue for us. And the way we have proposed the concept is it's really a transaction between PID as seller and county as buyer. And Cal Water just happens to be the receiving entity of our water. and they're also going to pay for a portion of it, not 100%, but there would be some proportionality there
Where's the water going?
to Cal Water's distribution system.
No,
But,
I meant not Cal Water, but you said there's other entities that would buy the water?
well, the county, so PID would be the seller, obviously, and the county would be the buyer, because
Yeah.
the county is the kind of lead actor in the SGMA discussion for that subbasin.
So the people are looking at it and saying politically, Cal Water is trying to steal the water, and maybe knowing our financial situation. Yeah.
That's basically what I heard from a number of folks is you're going to get hoodwinked and Cal Water's going to end up tricking you and taking you
Quite a
over.
feeling about that before this ever came up, that Cal Water was going to try to take over the district.
Yeah. So, you know, trying to educate, I think between now and Tuesday is important. I think it may still go against us just because the politics are what they are.
Yeah. Well, I'll promise you all, I won't show up at the meeting.
And Mark, you're out of town, huh?
Well,
An excuse?
maybe not now. I don't know. Okay, thank you, Dustin. I appreciate that. That was a great explanation. Thank you. Okay, I think we can go to something a little more fun now. Committee reports, and we only have one committee meet, I believe. It was the Community Relations Committee,
Sure.
and Shelby was there with me. And Shelby, you want to talk about it, or?
Sure.
I'll chime in,
So
whatever.
we had a presentation and information about the community facilities grant that the USDA offers. Specifically, we were exploring that and wanted to learn more about the options because we're looking at and having a lot of discussion about the demonstration garden and trying to find funding to repair and enhance the demonstration garden. And I think it was good information. I don't think it's viable as an option, but at least we can say we've uncovered that bush and we've looked around, right, Ward? And then we got a really good update from members of the public about the garden, and again the desire to build that 3-sided shed that would show fire safe, fire wise building as it relates to the garden. I'm really hoping that we're able to find some sources of materials and labor, donated labor, to see that come to fruition. And I think Ward has done a lot of the groundwork on that already to explore how we might be able to partner with the Garden Club, but also with Habitat for Humanity for donated, potentially or lower cost goods to be able to build the 12 by 4 foot 3-sided shed building. I don't really know what you're calling it.
We'll have to come up with a name.
We need to come up with a name. Mickey gave a great presentation about her outreach efforts at the Johnny Appleseed and shared really lovely handwritten thank you notes to the department and to the staff, which I thought was really heartwarming. And then we got a sneak peek at the PID hat samples that staff will be receiving, and that I think those are going to be really nice. I'm really excited to see those actually roll out. And then we got a customer service update about just the strategies that are taking place internally to improve the customer experience as it relates to the recovery efforts. And we have our next meeting on December 3rd at 8 a.m. If anyone wants to attend from the public.
And we talked about reviving the Buy a Bloom
Yes.
donations, so we're thinking of trying to rev that back
That
up.
was
So we
Ann's
can,
idea.
I talked to Ross actually the other day about it, so.
And there was a suggestion from a member of the public that we consider a resolution of appreciation for, I don't know the gentleman's name. I'm sorry, Ward.
Mike Spees, yeah.
Right, because he was so instrumental in the irrigation development, the irrigation system for the demonstration garden. And he's since moved out of the area, but it would be something for us to consider.
Yeah, I think that'd be excellent. His career was teaching at Chico State in the Ag Department irrigation. Doug Flesher got him on the board or on the committee to do that.
Nice.
Great. Any questions about the meeting? Okay.
That was a very full rundown.
Thank you very much, Shelby. That was great. Okay, we go to number 10. There's no unfinished business. How about number 11, new business?
So, like I said, we're going down multiple funding paths for the BRES replacement. One of the requirements was to notice the public of our intent of applying. Is that really truly what it is? The intent of applying for the application?
This is for to notify the public that PID is applying for USDA grant funding. And it's a requirement of the grant application that we have a motion. This was also advertised in the newspaper. And then the motion has to be passed by the board for us to proceed with the grant application.
And take any public comment, right?
Is it a public hearing requirement or just?
No.
Okay.
So is this the one that we need a resolution on? Or
no?
No. We just have to have an action.
Action. Okay. Any public comment? No? Okay. How about, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the application.
Second? We have a second?
I'll second.
We've got a second. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay. Motion passes 4-1. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. B, backflow devices, Director Kellogg.
Okay, what did they?
Does he have a written proposal?
Okay, the backflow devices that there's several manufacturers of them. Jim would know who they are and what kind of devices they have. But the problem has been that we were behind 400 and now we're behind 600, although we caught up with the 400. And so this is a way for people to get a backflow device when I've had people tell me they've been waiting 3 months, 2 months, and so forth, and can't get a backflow device. And so this was a way maybe to speed it up for these people can get on with what they're doing. The idea is simply the customers can buy the backflow devices and have local plumbers install the devices from approved lists, from PID, of course, that provides liability insurance and warranty. I've been told that these manufacturers do provide liability insurance and a warranty. I don't know if we provide any insurance or a warranty for our devices, but the idea is basically driven by the idea that we're not getting the job done. We're not getting enough devices out. I was told a couple of months ago all I needed was 6 more employees to help assemble them, and we'll be caught up within the next month. Well, the next month came, and we were actually behind more devices, even though they produced more. That just can't keep up with the demand. So this is a way we can help our customers get the backflow devices. I don't know what they cost. I don't know if they'll cost more or less than what the PID is charging, but certainly they can get the devices and have it installed. It turned out I talked to one customer that he bought a backflow device for his place, and he went to Jim with it, and Jim said, no, that's not the right kind of device. You should go back and trade it back in and get this device, which he'd already done once. And so it is actually taking place. In other words, he was buying the device himself for his apples. Now, so all I'm saying is, can we fix it for this can happen? It may be that they have to spend $700 for it, but some of these people are so anxious to get backflow devices after waiting several months that I'm sure it won't be a problem for $700 or $500 or whatever the money is involved. And they'll get them installed, and get them okayed, and away they go. And we would fill in on one hole on getting water to our customers. We have to get water to our customers for this town can grow as rapidly as the people want it to grow. I've got a backflow device. I don't need one, although that brings up something else about backflow devices. I'm sure my water pressure is well over 100 pounds. I can't not, I screwed in the most expensive hose I could get to take it from the backflow device and the thing and down, put it into my water system by just hooking it to another faucet. Well, today I bought this. $80. How many people know what it is?
Pressure regulator.
Pressure regulator. So this will put it down to 50 pounds. So I will be able to use the hose, and I will hook it on unless somebody tells me I can't. Here's the reducer, here's the nipple, and then I hook another nipple on it and put this faucet back on it, or put a new faucet because the old faucet has a 2-inch diameter in it, and that's fine. I was there and talking to the salesman at Ace Hardware, I said, well, we got a 2-inch line coming in. And he says, oh yeah, I can get you a 2-inch backflow device. I said, oh, that's interesting. What's it cost? Oh, those are expensive and they're bigger, $500 to $600. So this was $80 plus a few bucks. And I can plumb. I've been plumbing things for years. So I just simply want to take customers' complaints and turn it into a positive thing where we allow them, if they want to, do this. Because it'll cost them more money than PIDs. But maybe it'll get more houses with water so that they can water things. I take showers with the water. I don't drink it. That's about my limit. I don't use it in cooking. But I take showers with it, and I do my lawn, garden, and everything else. And like I mentioned earlier tonight, I use all sorts of water. So what I'd like to see, I didn't say anything about action on it or anything else. I want the directors to think about it. I want Jim to think about it, and Kevin. And because the advantage to this is simply with our customers, where they can get faster service and have water.
So isn't the contract that you're going to open up bids on tomorrow, doesn't that include the backflow device installation? Didn't we expand it to include that?
No, it doesn't include the interim water. It only includes the service line replacement for new construction. It will open up some time, though, to take pressure off of the people that are going out and doing the installation of those currently, to be out and to do the interim water. And I think Director Callig brings up a valid point. I really do. I'm not going to downgrade it at all. The things to think about, though, is that we are taking ownership of the backflow devices. That's kind of what our policy has stated. There's a testing requirement to the backflow before it's cleared, so somebody has to go out there and test it. The other thing too is that we're kind of exposed in our distribution system right now because of all of the damage that's associated with that. So meters and pulling out the meters and pulling out and repairing service line, each individual property has its own individual issues. And not saying that a licensed plumber or somebody who's very talented couldn't go out there and solve those issues, but there is a lot of issues that people are running into. There's some areas where there's no water on that street, and some of those we find out when we go out there to hook the backflow up, which is, so just because of repressurizing, we did it in a rapid fashion. So there's a lot more issues associated with that we have to kind of really remember. And I do support the board's decision to stay with a standardized backflow device. So that backflow device is standardized throughout the whole district once we get everything installed, so that it's a nice uniform backflow device that we know is protecting our system and the highest quality to protect the system. So I think that's my 2 cents. I'm going to let Jim just give his 2 cents so that you guys have something to see the other side.
Yeah, I don't think that I can add too much to what Kevin said. I can just repeat some of the delays certainly have been because of problems in the distribution system. We definitely got a lot more orders than we had anticipated, and we did have a supply issue there for a little while with the backflow devices and galvanized parts, plumbing fittings. So there was a bit of a delay. We are now really on the uphill swing with installing these. Part of that is that in this, when we go out and we find a service line that, for an example, was melted, and it melted shut, or it was damaged in some particular way, we have to repair that. We have to replace that. We have to get to the water main in order to even have water there. We have to turn water mains on. We turn water mains on. We have numerous leaks on some of those. So that is the delay in many of the installation of these backflow assemblies. We are really addressing those now. We have a goal. We started identifying some of the roads and getting a list of roads that need pressurization, whether we found it through trying to install an interim water supply backflow or other methods, or we knew about that and now we're finally able to get to repair and pressurize. Remember that repair and pressurization, we have to sample so that we can clear the main. In some cases, especially for construction or standing structures, which most standing structures, I believe, are served. And most standing structures actually do not require interim water service. The only reason we do that with standing structures is if they had a backflow requirement prior to November 8th. So then it makes absolute sense for them to purchase an interim water service. We are actually connecting it to their plumbing and providing water straight to their house. So it's definitely a benefit in those particular cases. But it's pretty rare standing structures. So we're really talking about destroyed parcels, right? And so those are some of the issues that we have in that. Definitely some of these service lines that we come up to, they appear to be fine. In fact, some of the sample site prep crews have gone up and grab an angle stop, and boom, the angle stop pops off. Then we got a can of worms on our hands, and you have to know how to fix those things. And oftentimes that requires getting down to the water main. So I think that when we look at that, we're catching up quickly. We have about 800 as well. Tomorrow, I believe we're going to have over 800. That leaves about 400 left, which many of them are, again, on unpressurized water mains. But we're getting about 15 a day average, sometimes more than that, right? Depending on how we can set those crews up. So we have 400 left. You know, we've got, what's that, 5.5, 6 week period left to install that bulk. And we're watching the orders for interim water supply really come down. So just like the contractor that will help us out with service line replacements, that'll get us to a manageable point. And so we used to have resources coming in too, Alliance for Workforce Development that will assist us with sampling and interim water supply, flow test, and the other needs that we need. So I think we're on a good track. Certainly it's taken, hey, there's no joke. It's difficult. There's nobody that's done this before, right? No one. And I personally think that we're killing it, for lack of a better way to say that. The customers, yeah, I get their frustration in some of these cases. We've had some customers waiting since May because of the extensive damage of the water main. And we're working on it. And in fact, I had one of those particular customers called today. We tried to get out there today to start the work on it, which we did preliminary work about 2 weeks ago. And as soon as the crew got out there, water main was hit by a contractor, and we had to respond to that. So therein is another delay. So how do we get to that? Well, we get to it tomorrow, but that's going to delay that a little bit. There's no contractor that is going to help us in that case by just installing an interim water supply backflow. Without water, it's for naught.
I think it would be a different situation if we had a fully intact water system and we were just looking at putting backflow devices on a healthy distribution system.
If that were the case, that would really be the only way to do it.
So I'm going to kind of tag along with what you're saying. So, if the meter's gone, there's no shut off. So if they were working from the shut off inward, it would make sense maybe to allow something like that. But if you're working directly on PIDs, lines and everything, and it just, to me, it doesn't make sense that you would allow somebody outside of our grasp and control to start tapping into the lines
That's a key point.
I think one of my biggest concerns is that we're discovering things now that we didn't even know we had in front of us. And there's a huge difference between a plumber and a water system tech. I can plumb a house. And I went up to the water treatment plant and I lost my mind. There's just a huge difference between it. But by installing our own backflow preventer and our own water regulator, that also just gives us another stumbling block. We can't do our test. We can't clear that property properly with our uniform testing procedures. And it was my belief that the reason that we approved your design was so that we had a uniformed procedure. Because if I have a plumber come and install this system, we're going to have to take it off, put in our uniform system so that we can test it and clear that property within our testing procedures. And I think we're creating another stumbling block and or another problem. If he grabs the angle stop and it comes off, then we have a leak. I understand the need, whether someone has a beautiful garden or a pool that they want to keep filled so it doesn't break, or whatever the reasoning is, everybody believes they have the best reason. We need to get them water as quickly as we can, but I believe that we need to do it in a uniform procedure that we can treat and maintain and trust, and not come up with something that we have to redo at a later date.
What you have is manufacturers that have their devices certified and approved, and they sell them all over the state through water districts or straight to people, and they have proven devices, and they have the liability insurance and warranty. The information for this came to me months ago from a retired waterman out of Santa Cruz, and he had been there for years, and he told me, hey, there's several companies that put out excellent backflow devices that will meet your needs, and you can inspect them, and they'll pass whatever you're needing before you allow them to use it. So you're not just telling them, go to the plumbing shop and get your backflow device. Like the man I talked about, he went and got a backflow device and checked with Jim and found out it wasn't what Jim wanted him to have. So he went back and ordered another one, because I'm thinking he's using big pipes, not maybe even bigger than 2 inches, because of his orchard. The thing here is this is a bottleneck for getting our customers back on their properties. And we can do it properly. We can have the same people that inspect our water backflow devices, inspect these. You can pick out a couple of them that you think that would work, and Jim could do that would be good backflow devices. And then simply you could even buy the things and resell them with instructions and everything else on them, mark them up 10 or 20%, make a few dollars on them to help pay for the inspection and other things. I'm not saying this is stopgap. I'm saying this is for the future if we're going to get our people back on their properties. And that's all it's about. It's not that I want to say we put out a poor backflow device. I don't think so. We put out a good one. I just wonder why it's 2 inches. The thing is, that's all it's about, and really it wasn't. Georgiana asked me if I wanted an action item. I said, I guess so. But really, the whole idea behind bringing this up is to get the board to consider it and talk to people in the community about if they're having problems with the backflow device and how long are they waiting and so forth, and find out what's going on. And they'll easily talk to you and talk about it, and they may, like one person told me, oh, I got it, it's just fine, it worked out great, and then somebody else is still waiting 3 months, like this woman that came with the misinformation thing. That's all it's about.
I think it's also important to remember that when we approved that, it was an interim policy with a deadline. And one of the things I put in the action item that night was that when and if it was determined that these backflow devices would be made a permanent part of the system, that it would be FEMA reimbursable, and that the customers who've paid the $500 or $600 or $700 would then be reimbursed. So if someone were to go out and purchase one in the future, that would not be a reimbursable cost to them.
Right.
And I know a lot of people don't feel like $500 is maybe a lot of money, but I think $500 is a lot of money when you're trying to pinch every penny to rebuild a house when costs have increased.
I agree. I'm saying this is only for, I don't know how many people, but there are people that are waiting for water before they can do something, and they're upset about waiting.
I think that Jim gave a great explanation, though, of the timing we had a greater need, and we have a solution that's within sight. And I don't want anyone to wait longer than they have to at all.
Okay.
But I think I want to look at the longer view of the recovery. And I think it's too risky for us to just say, yeah, we'll create a list, which would mean we'd have to go through some sort of vetting process to provide to the public to say these are approved, vetted contractors. And then what if we have something happen when they're out there, and then we have staff being pulled off of what they're doing already to go fix the problem that a approved contractor,
I'm sorry,
I hear you.
I've done enough plumbing that this is not, what's the comment, rocket science. It is a very simple operation to do if you have any experience at all doing plumbing.
I don't doubt that installing the actual backflow device isn't rocket science, but I think what Jim's point is that we're dealing with a system that's damaged, and there's uncertainties if what's beneath and what's beyond that backflow device. You could have someone out there and there's, like you said, no water in that line.
Okay, I'll be glad to tell the people that have complained to me about it that the board has considered it and decided not to do anything.
Well, I'm going to jump on what she
Are
was
we
saying.
beating all the COOs?
I'm sorry?
All the certificates of occupancy, are we beating them?
We have.
We have to this point.
It's Colleen's job.
Yep. In fact, we just had a couple that, right there, but yes.
Yeah, we're just looking at that. Today we have a prioritized list that we've developed a tool to be able to take in information from the town of Paradise and prioritize the sites that will address for surface water replacement to be able to be everyone's CFO whenever it's possible. And we're still going to run into circumstances with surface water replacement project where we go out in the field, we have a contractor go out in the field and find issues like the ones that Jim is talking about, where we have to set those aside for PID staff to address and continue moving on as quickly as possible with the contractor. So that's a common issue across the projects. But
It is, absolutely.
we are looking just even this afternoon to make sure, hey, these ones are at the very top. We understand from the town that they're at or near final inspection. Have we addressed them already? If we haven't, when can we get them on schedule? So we're paying close attention to
The reason I'm interested is early on, I received a lot of calls, and it was people under the belief that you needed to have a water faucet to build a home. And you don't. It takes 100 gallons to build a house until you're ready to test the drain system. You need water to wash off your concrete tools. You need water to do your drywall, and you need water to test your drain system or shower pans. But other than that, other than drinking water, you don't need water to build a house. And as long the rest of it tends to be emotional, like the passion that Ward has for gardens. A lady purchased a lot across the street from my house, and her plants are dying left and right. And we ran a hose from my house over to her house so that she can water every weekend. And most of the water need, and that is more emotional. And once they understand that they don't have to have water, or they could have a water elephant that they rent, or a water buffalo that they rent for construction, that need for the immediate water kind of goes away. But I'm just wondering, as long as we're meeting the C of Os, and that's the priority, is to get people living in their homes.
Absolutely, and in that regard, we are doing that.
Okay.
Greg, you were going to comment?
Well, I was just going to kind of jump on what she was saying about by the time you actually vet people and everything else, I think the backlist is going to be taken care of anyway. It sounds like based on what Sam was saying and everything else, that the ball is rolling, and it'll just take care of itself in a time. And I understand the what you're saying about we need to have time of the essence to get these people their water as soon as we can. And I think really that we're on track to get the water to people as soon as they can.
So I disagree and lose another one. Water sampling. Customers can get own water samples and pay for private labs to test for benzene and VOC. Share results with BID. Bank requires this for loans. Customers pay for the sampling and lab results. People are already doing this to get their loans, and they're not sharing it with PID. They're simply going out and getting water samples, and I've had people tell me, oh, I've got good, clean water. I don't know how they pulled the samples. I don't know what they did. They got their water sampled, and they're not going to tell the PID about it. They're just going to hook things up, and away they go. So I think, to me, it's a way of saying PID is interested in helping them to get these samples, or tell them to whatever lab or whatever thing, and PID gets the results. They pay for the cost of the water samples. They pay for to test it for it and share results. If it means something I brought up several months ago, that we have a thing like the EPA has in their files about how to sample water for these products, for benzene and volatile organic compounds. It exists. It's in EPA's book, or you can look it up online, and there it is, how to sample. I don't know what the labs tell people when they go in and ask them what kind of thing they have to do to get a good water sample. So I'm just going here, it's the same thing. The woman that told me was one woman, she works at a bank, and I didn't realize that for the bank to okay a loan, they have to have a potable water, okay? So, and she has property, and she is one that's been waiting for 3 backflow devices for months and can't get through, or whatever the reason, the phones, we have a terrible communication problem. So here it is, another way to maybe break the logjam. We do all these samples and everything, and I've been told in the meetings we can't possibly do this or that. We can't possibly have a little lab. We can't do this. We're going to be taking as many samples as we can a day and put them through. And the district's paid out this month $17,000 for water samples. And I'm saying, okay, if we have people that need to have a loan at the bank, why don't we help them in a way before they can get the correct water sample, and we can see it, the results, and know that there's one house that may have potable water that we're not aware of. So that's all it is.
So I'm going to throw my 2 cents in on there as a real estate broker and everything else. So we've had to deal with this. We've had people come up when the loans were contingent on having potable water. Their water test that was drawn for the particular transactions that I'm aware of, they just went in there and they pulled water, no stagnation or nothing, and then they took it in. They got their clearance of potable water, and they took their certificate to their bank, and the bank says, great, you got potable water. But the truth of the matter is, they don't know if it was actually potable or not. It was just, if it's flowing, you're getting the flow water without doing the stagnation. You're not getting, I think, a valid reading. But I've seen it a few times, and the banks just didn't care. They just had a little sheet and said, okay, great, we're done. So I'm not sure that whoever you're talking about, if they had to deal with that or not. But I was still kind of what Dan was talking about, the backhoe device as a standard. There's got to be a standard there to protect PID interests, which is in return protecting our clients, our bosses' interests by providing them with clean, potable water. So.
Yeah, and I got to chime in on this one. The line of demarcation is at the meter. The previous discussion topic was on our side of the meter. Typically, we don't let people touch our side of the meter. There have been exceptions, however, where we have allowed a third party to touch our system, and there's protocols, there's legal agreements, there's engineering involved to ensure that they do it appropriately. So on the last topic, I didn't chime in. But on this topic, there is no precedent for us going onto the customer's side of the meter. And if you do so, that's not one step onto the slippery slope. That's a ways down. So I'm not exactly sure, Director Kellogg, what you're suggesting. I think there may be an approach where we could provide information and kind of a best management practices type.
I'll chime in on that. DDW they do have a protocol for in-home testing. It's on their website. Any person can go on there and pull the DDW's protocol. They published it, and they have ownership of it. The other thing, too, is we did support a grant opportunity for Dr. Solomon to come in and to help our customers. She's had over 120 houses sign up for it. Completely free. In that, she did ask for a waiver to have those results given to PID for our information. But I agree with Dustin at that point. It's the we, and again with Director Maurer, that we hold the procedures. We hold the quality control of the sampling, and we hold the demarcation line of where we consider that water potable starts and ends.
And I'll tell you, I just went last Friday, I went to a local lab and got my test kit. And there was no instructions. They basically handed me the bottles and said, pay your fee and bring it back on ice.
How did the sample come up?
I'm waiting for the results. And I already have my letter of potability from PID, but because I have such a long run from where my meter box is to my house,
You're checking the pipe going into the house.
Correct.
Yeah, well, good.
But I'm just saying, there was no in-depth. They didn't even say you should stagnate. I know that I needed to stagnate, but I think there's so much potential for not valid results if people don't follow the instructions, that they have to then take the extra step and figure out from DDW what do you do to get a valid sample.
Well, if I needed a clear test for a loan, I'd pull it in Chico.
I think Jim's got something.
The truth of the matter is that
You have a comment, Jim?
I think it's important to recognize that what PID is doing with sampling is we're checking the health of our system, of our infrastructure. Dustin's spot on. We're responsible to the meter, and that's what we can do. So when we're sampling, we're not sampling the water. We're sampling the condition of the service line material and then the quality of the water in the water main. But we can only do that following the protocol that we've developed. So anything outside of that does not give us what we're really trying to determine with any kind of confidence at all. So it's really important to keep that in mind. In regard to bank, I think there's a lot of competition going on that. We actually have had a couple instances where we've written a letter and said, here's what we're doing, and this is how this place will get potable water because it was contaminated service line that we found, so we're going to replace it. Well, it's a matter, we got to get it in 5 days, and perfect. So here's a letter, and they said, great. We go out, replace the service line, no harm, no foul. But I think those two things are really important, especially what we're really doing when we're sampling. What is it we're trying to prove? Whether the PID system is contaminated or not.
I'll add one more thing to what Jim said. We know that the appropriate stagnation period is critical to determining the condition of that piece of infrastructure, that service lateral. And we have many examples of locations where we have tested flowing water as clean and stagnated water showing contamination of that service lateral. And so it is critical not only to stagnate the service lateral, but document that we've stagnated that service lateral and properly tested it to know whether that piece of infrastructure is dirty or clean. And we have had a 97 or 98% success rate with standing structures with the service laterals that serve those standing structures, and that's great. We haven't had to replace very many. But just like that woman who was here tonight, there are a few that have to be replaced because that piece of infrastructure is contaminated. Yep. And those are critical that we find those pieces of contaminated infrastructure and replace them. Yep. And we can only do that by going through this procedure, which is, well, somewhat painstaking, I think, critical to maintaining that public confidence that this infrastructure is tested and clean.
As someone with a standing structure who tested positive, I appreciate that there's diligence in that process. And I want to really be cautious. So I appreciate all the work that's gone into ensuring the health and safety.
Well, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Bill.
Public
comment. Public comment, please.
Thank you, yes. So I did get an answer to my neighbor's question, thanks to Mr. Ladrini. He was not there yesterday when they put the backflow prevention device in. I was. I knew exactly what they were doing. So today he says to me, the water's on, the water's on. I said, I know it is, Robert. He goes, where is it going? He opened the hose bib, and water comes gushing out. There's a pipe that goes from there down in the ground. Where's the water going? He's looking all over his property to see where it's bubbling up. And I said, well, if you don't see it bubbling up here, and it's not bubbling up in the neighbor's yard, and it's not bubbling up in the street, it's probably capped off underground. But he didn't know that. And he didn't know why they put in 1-inch lines when he had a 1/2-inch line going to his house before. I said, well, it's likely that sometime in the future, somebody living on this property might want to have sprinklers. And we're going to have 1-inch lines from the meter supplying that over to there, whether you like it or not. It doesn't affect the quality of your water. It doesn't affect the cost of your water. It doesn't affect how much water you get or how much pressure there is. It doesn't change anything except the size of the pipe. Oh, how do you know that? And I said, well, I've been watching this for quite some time, but I'll have an answer for you. So now I can go back and tell him tomorrow that Mr. Ladrini said, yes, that pipe goes down underground, but it's capped off. And you can have all the water on that you want, but it's not flowing anywhere. He was worried about wasting water. That explains that. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Ward. That's a good one. Okay, I think we can move on. Go ahead, Kevin.
Can we handle 12 and 15 together?
Sure.
Please. Closed session, so it just means you just read both of them that we're going into closed session.
Oh, okay. Yes, sure. 12 and 15. Okay, conference with labor negotiators, California Government Code, Section 54957.6, employee organization, general unit, represented by IBEW, Local 1245. PID designated representative tonight is Dustin, right? Okay, and then 15 is conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, California Government Code, Section 54956.9, Paradise Irrigation District versus Pacific Gas and Electric Company.
Any public comments before we close session? No, Ward?
Thank you. Okay, we'll be back.